Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Those that are new to the channel, subscribe to see some of the content I made. Leave a comment down below for any ideas. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Link down in the description of the fanfiction of this, What If. To bring in part 10 of What If the Gate appeared in G.I. Joe. Chapter 18. Italica's Independence, New Friends and Allies. By now the Battle of Italica was officially over. Whatever was left of the Cobalt Pincers was now in the process of being rounded up by the coalition forces and were being held in warehouses under heavy guard. Numerous medical tents had been hastily set up to treat the large number of civilians and militiamen who had wounded during the battle, while those with the more serious injuries were loaded up on one of the Indian Mi-26s for immediate transport back to Ginza base. There was only so much a field hospital could do, and the medical facilities at the base would have been better suited to treat some of the more serious injuries. Apache and Viper gunships still buzzed the skies above while coalition soldiers now patrolled the streets of Italica, as they searched for any stragglers that may have managed to escape and were now in hiding. All the while the citizens of Italica looked on in both awe and wonder as these other worlders moved into their city and began help any way they could. Need it be moving an injured militiaman or even help cleaning up after the battle, these other worlder soldiers didn't ask questions or even asked for anything in return. They just did what needed to be done, and their actions were slowly winning over the population of the city. A fact that was not lost on a certain princess and her companions, who were rather uncomfortable by this developing situation. For Pina County Lotta and the Rose Knights, the battle was a bittersweet victory. Norma had been her friend for many years and was one of the founding members of the Rose Knights, but his sudden and violent death during the battle shook the royal to her very core. But what really made the princess upset was the fact that Norma's death was more or less in vain. Italica had been saved, but not by her knights or the still absent imperial army, but by the enemy of the empire. The very same enemy that was now occupying the holy hill of Alnus and had destroyed the Alnus garrisons. They had come to the rescue of the embattled city and defeated the bandit horde. Even more troubling, the other worlders had seemingly already earned the trust and respect of not only the city's inhabitants, but Countess Mayui as well. It was Mayui who accepted the other worlders' offer of assistance, and it was only by her suggestion that Pina and her knights were allowed to take part in the city's defense afterwards. As the cart carrying Norma's body pulled away, Pina could not help but to feel absolutely helpless. Italica was saved, but it was not Sidera or her father the people praised. It was not imperial soldiers that were now being given fresh water and fresh fruits from a grateful population, it were the men and women of this coalition which now enjoyed the attention they were getting. At the very least, we can say the bandits were defeated and the Italica was saved, commented Hamilton, trying to reassure her longtime friend leader. But Sidera can't take credit for this victory. Pina replied with a somber tone in her voice, Rory and the other worlder army, they were the ones who claimed this victory. And the rest of them, they still occupy Alnus Hill, they are still our enemy. Call me optimistic, but I think they wouldn't betray us, princess. If they could, they would do that before the bandits attack the city, said Beefeater El Cathy, trying to comfort her leader. And what if they do? I'm sure they won't, princess. What just Beefeater said was right, if they want to kill us, then they should have done it when they arrived in the city, added Alexander. I can't believe it. Our first mission, our first battle, and it ended a humiliation like this. Also, the other worlders who should become our enemy are helping us and stronger than us, said Bozes. She feels ashamed and scared at the same time. Of all Knights of the Rose Order, it was Martina who has now become scared and shocked. She arrogantly has threatening to kill one of the other worlders when they enter the castle, but now, she regrets that after she sees the true power of the other worlders. A defeated expression soon formed on the royal's face as she continued to speak. Her mind still playing over the scenes she witnessed when the attack helicopters swooped in. All I wanted to do was keep Italica safe, but I am afraid that I may have brought a fate worse than defeat upon the people of this city. Their flying weapons of steel and dark magic obliterated a horde of hardened bandits. If they were to turn that power toward Italica, Countess Mayui would be forced to give up her position and be taken as their prisoner. While this city, the empire's most important, would be in the hands of our enemy and its citizens taken as their slaves. But, no, they would never Hamilton tried to counter, but Pina cut her off. Are you really sure of that? The royal snapped, trying to fight back the tears. You really think they rescued this town just to give it back? I don't have the power to refuse their demands. I will have to throw myself at their mercy, and lower myself, to kiss their feet. I don't think you would have to lower yourself to such humiliation, said Centurion. Pina and her knights turned to him and saw him dressed in his dark blue uniform with a bereth on his head. You see, you're once again judging me and my forces by your own imperial standards, said Centurion. We're not here to conquer Italica, we're here only to establish free trade with the city and defend it from bandits. We also do not need to remove Countess Mayui from her throne, because this is her city, after all. What about our princess? Asked Bozes. She and you ladies are free to go, said Centurion, although considering that we're still at war with the Empire. But since you've fought side by side with us, we can hold for now our ceasefire. But for now, I would like to ask you to come with me to formal mansion. Countess Mayui needs to speak with you right now about some important matter. What do you mean, important? Asked Pina. I am not authorized to tell you that in the open, answered Centurion, you'll find out yourselves. Please, follow me. Completely defeated and with no other option but to obey, Princess Pina and her knights somberly made their way to the formal mansion. She was hoping that she and Mayui would be spared whatever fate the otherworlders had planned for the Countess, and she herself would be given as a prize to a powerful otherworlder court. Upon entering the Countess' chambers, Pina could see the child sitting in her throne with Pikachu sitting on her lap, as well as Major Payne, Lieutenant Colonel Joyce, Colonel Kengan and several otherworlder soldiers sitting with her as well. Not wanting to question what was going on, the princess made her way to one of the couches with her knights in tow and took a seat. The Countess' maids were also there as well and stood alongside their mistress in support. Nice to see that you finally were able to meet with us, Your Majesty, said Mayui, as she looked at the satyr and princess. Now we can begin. Sir Prime, if you please. Yes, Your Excellency, said Centurion, then he walked to the small table nearby, where several scrolls were laying on. Your Majesty Princess Pina, he said, during the siege of Italica, our agent Sam Fisher was able to acquire several important documents from Calus Hoba's camp. These documents reveal to us that your father, Emperor Molt Saul Augustus, was collaborating with the Cobalt Pincers. To say that this news shocked Pina and her knights would be putting it mildly. They were absolutely speechless, with their mouths wide opened and eyes dulled. What? Gasped Pina, jumping from her seat. That's impossible, Your Majesty, asked Centurion. I wish it was true, but here's the proof of my words. He took one of the scrolls and took it to Pina. Take a look, he said. This letter proves that Molt was promising Calus Hoba the title of Imperial Legate again, if he's taken Italica. I'm sure you'll recognize your father's handwriting, Your Highness. Countess Mayui has already confirmed that this letter was been written and signed by Emperor Molt's hands. She also recognized the Emperor's seal. Molt also promised your hand, Your Highness, to Calus Hoba as a citing bonus to reinstate him as Imperial Governor of Italica and one of Emperor's relatives. That's a lie, shouted Bozes. Our Emperor would never give his daughter to some low-life scum, like Hoba. Oh no. Shut back Centurion, I think this letter proves otherwise, madam. Your Highness, if you please. Pina took the letter with shaking hands and began to read it. She couldn't believe the words written on it, but they're all true. Her father, the Emperor of Satyran Empire, was promising her own daughter to that madman and even assures Hoba that he'll make sure that their marriage would commence shortly after the Italica would be cleansed. The more she read, the more angrier she's become. It also explains why there wasn't a descent cohort was been sended to Italica, because Molt was planning to recruit Hobas, Cobalt Pincers, and Apostas mercenaries as the replacements of imperial garrisons. He also wanted Hoba's bandits to continue their attacks on the villages as part of the imperial, scorched earth, strategy, which included the full desolation of Alnus province and making it no-life zone before the other worlders, so that their armies would not be able to feed on the land and water there. Horses, thus enabling them to march to Sidera. As she finished reading, Pina was completely furious. How dare that old senile fool, her father, propose her hand to that scum Hoba? It's one thing, if he would propose her to a postess, but bandit lord and murderer. It was just enough to make her own blood boil. Her teeth were gnashing, her eyes were almost shooting lightnings and her face was almost same color as her hair. The other knights were looking at her with shock. "Your Highness," muttered Hamilton. "Sir Prime," said Pina, her voice was calm, yet internal she was boiling mad. "Are you really sure that this is a real letter, not fake?" "I believe so, Your Highness," answered Centurion. "We've already interrogated several prisoners we have, and several of them confessed that during the days before the siege, Callus Hoba had a visitor, an imperial senator named Baron Clayton, who delivered this letter. I've also believed that you would like to listen by yourself about this visit, Your Highness." He then snapped his fingers to the soldiers at the door. "Bring in the prisoner," he ordered. One of the soldiers leaves, and a minute later, he and two more soldiers entered, escorting a siren. "Allow me to introduce to you Mayut Lune Sires," said Centurion. She was Hoba's personal mage. Sam and Delta Force team were able to capture her before Hoba started his attack on Italica. She's also the one who recognized Baron Clayton as Emperor's personal messenger. He then turned to Mayut. "Miss Sires," he said, "you've been brought here for answering several questions. However, if you would dare to lie or try to fool us, you'll be given to the authorities of Countess Formal and be hanged as a bandit. You now have one alternative, to fully cooperate with the Allied nations' forces. You understand that?" "Yes, Sir Prime," said Siren, looking terrified from the fate she might experience if she tries to play games with these people. "Good," said Centurion. "Now, tell us, when did the Imperial messenger has arrived at Cobalt Pincer's main camp?" "About 5 days ago." "How did he look?" "He was wearing Imperial senator's robes with green color, also looking old, with gray hair." "Who's recognized him?" "Boreas, Callus Hoba's second in command. He was once a captain from Tumaran Kingdom. He meets Senator Clayton several times." "What did Baron Clayton said?" "He promised that if they fulfill the Emperor's proposal, he'll reward them greatly with gold and jewelry, as well the slaves they could made from the people of Italic, as well from the Knights of the Rose." "That bastard," growled Beefeater. "How dare he treats us like some common peasants," hissed Panache. "Quiet," barked Centurion, "let the witness speak." "Continue, Miss Sires." "Senator Clayton also said," continued Mayut, "that if he should capture Princess Pina, her father the Emperor would gladly help him persuade her to marry Hoba, thus making him part of the Augustus family." And Hoba agreed. Yes, he was really happy and give Senator a fine wine. After which, Senator leaves and Hoba announced that they will march to Italica and capture it. "Thank you, Miss Sires," said Centurion, "your cooperation with the ANF will be noted. You'll be transported to our base at Alnus Hill, where you shall be held as our prisoner of war. If you behave yourself and continue to cooperate with our scientists and officers, you'll be allowed to live free in our refugee camp." "My great thanks to you, Sir Prime," bowed the Siren. "I shall always be grateful to you for saving my life." "You're welcomed, Miss Sires," said Centurion. "Captain, escort this young Siren to the helicopter outside the city. I've already MP to make sure she'll made to our base safe and sound. You may leave." "Yes, sir," saluted the captain. "Miss, follow me, please." The convoy and the Siren leaves the room, while Centurion turned to Pina. "So, Your Highness," he said, "do you believe now?" Pina was now angry, as never before. The words of the Siren has added more fuel to her fire of rage. She remembered Centurion's words, that the whole situation in Italica was looking too much of a betrayal, and now, she realized, that he was absolutely right, her father did betray her. And why shouldn't he? After all, she was born from a concubine, not from original empress. Her father never liked her much, and she was always been treated as a child and spoiled brat. And now, it all has made a grand conclusion. She was a bargaining chip for her father's scheme to kill two birds with one stone, to replace the destroyed imperial legions and to cause more chaos in Alnus province, all NY forcing her to marry Callus Hoba. She then remembered Centurion's words, that her father already betrayed Duran, and King Duran's words about Emperor's deception. She did not want to believe back then, that her father would betray his own subjects, but now, she realized, that it was all true. Her father committed betrayal again, and this time his own daughter. "Oh, How short-sighted and naive she was back then. Would she really believe that her father would trusted her and her knights a real important mission? She was nothing more than a tool for him to complete his own ambitions. Well, she's maybe naive, but not stupid. Her father would pay dearly for betraying her and her friends. She'll make him see that those who betray others will soon end up being betrayed themselves. That senile old fool has greatly underestimated her. She will join forces with these other worlders and stop this insane war once and for all. With those thoughts, she rises from her seat. Sir Prime, she said, you've just made me open my eyes on what's been really going on in the Empire. I would like to propose a meeting between myself and your superiors. What? Gasped Hamilton. But, Your Highness. Silence, barked Pina, don't you see? We now have no other choice. Not only we know that our emperor has betrayed us, but also we know that we can't fight these other worlders. Therefore, we have no other choice but to do what King Duran has proposed me to do, make peace with them. But, Your Highness, said Bozes, this is a betrayal. Are you insane, Bozes? Snapped Pina. What kind of a betrayal you're talking about, when we've been already betrayed? Exclamation mark. Our emperor, my father, has made the deal with those bandits to literally sell us, like some meat on the market, and me to this scoundrel Hoba as his personal slave and bride. Do you really believes that a man like that still worthy to call as our emperor and be served faithfully? Well, I say, nay. I don't know about you, but as for me, I'm done with all loyalties to my father, who betrayed me. From now on, I'm loyal only to the people of the Empire. He will no longer command me or treated me as some spoiled child. Enough is enough. It's time for me to grow up and start thinking for myself, not let my father do my thinking. The other knights just sitted shocked, hearing Pina's words, while she turns to Centurion. I would like to make contact with the leaders of the allied nations' forces as soon as possible, she said. I think that can be arranged, Your Majesty, said Centurion. However, before we conclude our meeting, I believe that there are few more things we need to wrap up. Your Excellency, he turned to Mayui. Your Majesty, Mayui spoke up, her voice filled with confidence. I called you here also to make a very important announcement. As you are well aware, Italica and the formal clan was forced to swear its loyalty to your great-grandfather, after his army surrounded the city and threatened to burn it to the ground over a century ago. Ever since then, we have not only been forced to give up our freedom and independence, but were also forced to pay yearly tribute to Sidera Pay for its constant campaigns. Yes, I am well aware of that fact, said Pina. Then you are also well aware that it was one of these campaigns that ultimately caused the other worlders to cross the gate and destroy the Alnis garrisons after your father ordered them to march on the hill, leaving Italica defenseless and at the mercy of bandits that now plagued the province. Said Mayui with a stern tone in her normally soft voice, her soft gaze slowly forming into a harsh glare, as the documents captured by Sir Prime's agents revealed, despite being one of the most important cities in the Empire, your father and the Senate did not feel Italica was important enough to defend and send a proper army, rather they've decided to make a deal with the bandits, who then laid a siege on Italica by Emperor's proposal. That action alone speaks volumes about how the Empire truly sees its people. Yes, said Pina in defeated tone, I quite understand that, Countess. In any case, Your Majesty, as the head of the House of Formal and guardian of the Formal lands, it is my duty to ensure that my people feel a sense of security and feel safe in their own homes, the Countess stated, her focus still on Pina or other knights. Therefore, I must inform you that as of this moment, the House of Formal renounces its allegiance to Sidera and its ruling families. What? Gasped Hamilton, looking as she's been hit by a sledgehammer. But, Countess, the Empire has shown to us its true color, Madam Hamilton, that it is incapable to protecting its own people, and the fact they did not see it fit to send an army and preferred to collaborate with the bandits, just shows that its leaders does not truly care about anyone but themselves. Replied Mayui, her soft yet stern voice both shocked and even horrified Hamilton and other knights as well. Up until this point, they only saw Countess Mayui as only a young child that knew nothing about the world. Now they saw Mayui as not as a child, but as a natural-born leader. But Countess, Hamilton tried to reason with the child. What will you do once you leave the protection of the Empire? It is funny that you have asked that, said Mayui with a smile. The kind of smile that made the Imperial Knights nervous. I have been talking with Lieutenant Colonel and the Major, and through him I have been in contact with the other worlder commanders. Apparently they are in need of a second base where they could effectively police the province and provide security for the many villages that reside in it. Indeed, Joyce added, as he stood up and walked up alongside the Countess. The Countess here has offered to allow our troops to occupy Italica and use the city as our base until we can construct a permanent one on the land she has gifted us. But Countess Mayui, Bozes was just about pleading at this point. The Empire has been absolutely useless and incompetent, the young child shot back, now looking angry. The only reason the province is in the state that it is currently in, is because Sidera attacked these people in an attempt to subjugate them, just as Pina's ancestor did with Italica. It is Sidera's fault that the Alnus garrisons were destroyed and all because they hungered for conquest. Apparently, your emperor has not learned about the mistakes his great-grandfather made and decided to walk on the same rake all over again. That is why the gods has turned their wrath on him. He has betrayed us to those bandits. Because of him, my father died needlessly in other world by fighting the battle he couldn't win. Such crimes will not be forgiven. I swear, I'll make that bastard pay for what he did to Italica, my family and my people. As of now, the formal principality will no longer be the vassal of the empire. From now on, Molt will have to deal with other worlders himself, not using my family and my people as cannon fodder. But, Countess, started Hamilton. That's enough, Hamilton, said Pina. I am fully understand why Countess did this, and I'm also respect her decision as well. What? Gasped Bozes, but, Your Highness. Aren't you learn anything yet, Bozes? Shot back Pina, wake up and face the reality. My father, our emperor, has betrayed his vassals, he betrayed Countess Mayui, and he even betrayed you and myself, his own daughter. I'm maybe an imperial princess, but I'm also been born from a concubine, so I see no reasons why he shouldn't betray me as well. And not only that, he's also betrayed you. Do you still wanna defend the man, who keeps betraying everybody, even himself? Bozes then lowered her head. No, Your Highness, she replied in defeated tone. Good, said Pina, we shall talk about this later. She then turned to Countess Mayui. Countess Mayui, she said, I would like to say, that as the imperial princess of the empire, I am fully respect your decision to break your ties with the empire. I would like to ask you to grant my Knights of the Rose a temporary stay, while I'll have my meeting with the other world leaders. Actually, Your Highness, said Centurion, you and your knights can stay here as long as you like. Huh, surprised Hamilton, what do you mean, Sir Prime? What I mean, is that it'll take some days, before our engineers build the base near Italica, answered Centurion. By that time, we may need someone to help us train the militia and police the land. Your Order of the Rose may be not experienced enough, but you're also a good fighters. Also, we considering to use Italica as a neutral ground to negotiate with anyone from Sidera, who wants peace with us. That's right, said Joyce, it's best for us to allow trade from Sidera to flow through Italica for the time being. That way the taxes Madame Mayui can collect from these traders for using Italica as a place to do business could prove to be very helpful in the long run. It may be a while before the province will be fully secured, which means most caravans and merchants would have no choice but to stop in Italica to do business. It would be the only safe place for them in the province. As you wish, gentlemen, said Mayui, we will continue to do trade with Sidera if they so wish to, but all taxes collected will be used to rebuild the city and not a single gold coin will be sent to Sidera. And as for you, Princess Pina, you and your knights can stay if you want, but you will no longer have any authority while you are a guest in Italica. Is that understood? Fully, Countess, answered Pina. Good, said Centurion. Now, there's just one more case we need to wrap it up. Before we can close this meeting, bring us the formal sisters. The doors opened, and from them entered two women with similar hair color, like Mayui, yet they were fully grown women. They both were grim looking and looked at each other with despise and hatred. Follow them were two men, who were husbands to these women. Esther and Mu Formal, said Centurion, you've been summoned here to answer for your crimes against Italica. We did not committed any crime, shouted Esther. Speak for yourself, you tramp, shot back Mu. Why you, growled Esther. Quiet, roared Centurion, there will be no more your idiotic feuds here in this city. You're also responsible for the conditions Italica is in now. What? Shouted Esther, how dare you accuse us, you filthy barbarian. No sooner Esther shouted these words, Centurion then swiftly moved and slapped her lips, making her scream in pain. Do not dare insult me, or you'll pay dearly, he snarled, and as for you, Mew, you're the one who hired those mercenaries, yet you've wasted the city's treasury on your fun things. But I needed something to become a new countess, pleaded Mui. You can't be a countess even in the pig stock, shot back Esther, while rubbing her sore lips. Shut up, you stupid swine, screeched Mui. Silence, roared Centurion, I have spoken. Both women were now looking with fear at the man before them. I've been talking with your younger sister Mayui about you too, said Centurion, and in our conclusion, you both are guilty in worsening the Italica conditions. So therefore, you are no longer have any rights over Mayui, who's now the real head of the formal family. What? Gasped both women, but what about? You too? Asked Centurion, Mayui here has decided to send you two troublemakers away from Italica as far as possible. Your families will be deported to the opposite town's informal principality, and you will never be allowed to set foot in Italica again. If you violate this law, you both will lose your heads. No fair, whined both women. Take them away, ordered Centurion. The soldiers have entered the room, took both women and their husbands and took them away. Then Centurion turned to others. Well, that's wrap it up everything, he said, now, if you excuse me, I've got some other things to do. Certainly, Sir Prime, said Countess, although I hope you'll join me and others after sundown. There's something I need to discuss with you. As you wish, Your Excellency, said Centurion. It was a sight that many in the city of Italica never thought would happen. For as long as anyone could remember, the flag of the Satyran Empire had flown proudly over the city square, and that been the case ever since the city was annexed by Sidera. It was a constant reminder to everyone that even though the formal clan controlled the city, it was ultimately the Satyran Empire and the imperial family that held power over them. It was a constant reminder that Italica was a part of the empire, whether the people liked it or not, and it was a fact that made anyone who knew of Italica's proud past, blood boil. But today, that all changed. As elements of what was left of the city's militia marched up to the imperial colors and proceeded to lower it to the dirt-covered surface. Minutes later, and without even bothering to fold the imperial seal, the colors of the formal clan rose proudly in its place as the militia men cheered at the sight. This was an action that was now being repeated all over the walled city, as symbols of the Satyran Empire were removed and banners of the formal clan took their place. It was not long after until Countess Mayui addressed her people and announced that Italica had officially declared itself independent and had cut all political ties with Sidera. The assembled crowd began to cheer wildly at the news, as the Countess began to outline the plans she had for Italica's future. Money that would normally be sent to Sidera as tribute, would now be used to fund new social programs and rebuild the damaged city. But while the citizens cheered on at their newly founded independence, Princess Pina and her knights could only look on in shock and despair. Italica, Sidera's most important city, was no longer Sidera's to claim, as Mayui and the entire city willingly allowed themselves to be occupied by the army of the other worlders. But there was nothing Pina or her knights could do to change this outcome, as Mayui had made sure that Princess Pina and her knights had no authority in the newly independent city-state. Then again, what could she do? What could any of them do at this point? Italica now had the backing of the other worlders, and soon they would be using the city as a base to conduct operations against the empire. Already the other worlder army had set up a camp of sorts near the east gate, and it was only a matter of time before more of them arrived to construct a permanent base. Pina could see soldiers occupying some of the buildings, while others now provided security for the young countess. Yet the population did not seem to mind their presence. In fact, they seemed to be more comfortable around the other worlders than they did when she and her knights were talking to them. It feels like we've been completely ignored, lamented Hamilton. I can't blame them, replied Panache. For them, we represent the main foe that once rolled over them. Now, they're free from it, and we're nothing but ghosts, said Pina. Yes, that's what we are, but I can't blame them for that. After all, if they would knew about my father's deal with those bandits, they would tear us apart. Your Highness, said Bozes, there must be a way to convince Countess Mayui to. To what? Asked Pina, to renounce her decision of breaking ties with the Empire. Or forget the fact that my father has literally sold her and her people to those bandits on silver platter. I may be naive, Bozes, but I'm not stupid. Besides, I also cannot forgive father for what he's done with me. At least now I know why that deserter didn't want to join the Imperial Army anymore, who would have want to fight the war, which is already lost. Are you sure about that, Your Highness? Asked Beefeater. Take a look around, answered Pina. Do you see those other worlder soldiers? We all saw their powers, we saw them destroy those bandits, we even saw Centurion Prime killing those mercenaries and Apostus with his Fist of the North Star. Not only that, we saw him fighting those bandits together with Rory Mercury, who's practically obeyed every word Centurion said to her, as if they become one. Do you really believe that after what we've saw, we can still win the war? With what? With some magical spell or even help from the gods. They've already turned their backs on us. How can we fight the war, if we're already lost it? It's just a matter of time, before they come knocking to the doors of Sidera itself, and we would have nothing to stop them burning it to the ground and avenging those people our soldiers killed in Otherworld. No, King Duran was right, we must make peace with them, or Empire will be destroyed. While at the same time, Lloyd L. Keel was standing outside the formal mansion house. Excuse me, he suddenly heard. He turned and saw Centurion. What is it, Sir Prime? Asked Lloyd. Are you Lloyd L. Keel, native of Kota Village? Yes, I am. I was been picked by Princess Pina for my sword skills from Imperial recruits. I see, said Centurion. Well, I may have something for you. A woman in refugee camp at Alness Hill asked me to give this. He then handed Lloyd a small scroll. Lloyd opened and read it, his hands were shaking. Mother, he muttered, then looked at Centurion. Tell me, Sir Prime, is she all right? Yes, she is all right, said Centurion. She's currently right now in our refugee camp. You can always come visit her. Thank you, Sir Prime, exclaimed Lloyd, shaking Centurion's hand. I owe you great thanks for this. Mark my words, Lloyd L. Keel will return his favor real soon. I'm sure you will, Sir Lloyd, smiled Centurion. Outside, Martina saw Centurion with Lloyd. Your Highness, she said, take a look at this. Pina and other knights looked and saw Lloyd with Centurion. What's going on, Martina? Asked Pina. I saw Sir Prime giving Lloyd some kind of a scroll, answered Martina. He read it, and suddenly, he got happy. It must be from his mother, said Beefeater. I've heard, he has a mother at Kota Village. She was been said taken by other worlders to Alness. Does that means, they've taken her to their world? Asked Panache. Answered Martina, shaking her head. From what I've heard, she's in the other worlders' refugee camp. Sir Prime must have told Lloyd that he can visit her there. They're gonna allow the enemy soldier come to their own refugee camp, snorted Bozes. That's ridiculous. It must be some kind of a trick. I don't think this is a trick, answered Pina. I think I've realized what those apostles said about the man with the Fist of the North Star. He has the way to touch other people's hearts so that they've become his friends. That's how he was able to reach Lloyd's heart, by telling him about his mother and allowing him to see her. He'll do that for a soldier, asked Beefeater. For a friend, answered Pina. Then that's our solution. We must make friends with this man. It's our only chance to save the Empire. Outside Italica, the bandits were rounded up by the other worlder soldiers in order to keep them from fleeing the place or to enslave them, but that's only them, the captured bandits, who think that of. Then, Tikhomirov approached the two soldiers who guarded the captured bandits. The two soldiers were one Russian and one American. Hey, Sergeant, Tikhomirov yelled at the Russian soldier. Yes, Comrade Captain, answered the Russian soldier. Listen, since this is one of the agreement parts, I want you alongside your colleagues to bring the prisoners to the Alness mob, said Tikhomirov. I want those groups, that group led by that female leader, those elves with blue and white attires, those 3 ex-legionnaires, that mage with orange attire, and that horned creature. Yes, Comrade Captain. The soldier acknowledged Tikhomirov's order and then he was assisted by some of his colleagues which were American and Russian soldiers. They both helped the Russian soldier to escort the prisoners to enter the Chinook and the Hip. Is this the end? asked Ninafru herself with a scared tone. Mister. Why you won't kill us, right? Please tell me that you won't kill us, she yelled at the American soldier, wanting to make sure that they wouldn't kill her and her friends. Just shut up and get in, said the American soldier while pointing the M4A1 at her. He pointed the gun at her because he feels that she is very annoying. Ninafru freezed right when the rifle was pointed at her. Didn't want to stay long in this place. A Russian soldier harshly grabbed her and took her to the seat of the Chinook while saying, "Get in," in a heavy Russian accent and angry tone. You sure you don't want to go back, Captain? Colonel Lyutenkov asked Tikhomirov after seeing the prisoners loaded up into the helicopter. No need to, sir. We still need to complete our mission. Well then, do not worry, Captain. Some of the ground soldiers will stay here until our delegation arrived. Which means your platoon would not be alone in this city, said Lyutenkov. Thank you, sir. We really need more men in here. Tikhomirov thanked him. He known that the situation in this city would be more critical if it was only their platoon stationed here. Is something wrong, Captain? Asked Lyutenkov. Nothing, sir. I just feel this war is very different than in our world. Beats me. I shared the same thought as you too, Captain. Back in my days, I thought fighting against poorly equipped terrorists isn't fair compared to our forces. Now, it's completely unfair. Lyutenkov commented regarding this war, but this is a new world, and there's a chance that there is a strong enemy that will cause a lot of trouble. We are like a big children inside a huge arcade center, but do not know which game we want to play and how we play it. Alright, I need to get back to the base alongside some of the prisoners you requested. Good luck on your mission, Captain. Tikhomirov and Colonel Lyutenkov made a quick salute at each other. Then the colonel entered the Mi-17 and leaves the city. At the tavern, there was a great commotion. What's going on here? Shouted Centurion, arriving with Haruka and Michiru. Sir, ASN word Tomita, who was standing with Kuribayashi, some locals are trying to get into the tavern, saying that we're holding their people. You're holding our people, shouted one of the men, with red flustered face. We demand that you let us in. And who are you? Asked Centurion. I am Darius the merchant, said the man, and these people are holding here one of my servants. Darius, huh? Snorted Centurion, I know you. You're a slave trader from Slavery Guild. That's right, said Darius, and these barbarians are holding one of my best slaves in there. Well, I've got something for you, Darius, shot back Centurion. 1. According to the formal laws, slavery is forbidden in Italica, so that means, you operate here illegally. 2. According to our sources, you're also been selling several captives from our world, so that makes you a criminal. And 3rd, we've got several documents showing that you've been in league with the Cobalt Pincers. So, that makes also you a collaborator and a traitor to the Italica. In the name of formal family and allied nations forces, you are under arrest. He then took out his handgun and pointed at Darius. This is absurd, yelled Darius, looking horrified. You cannot arrest me. Oh, really? Snorted Haruka. Well, it's just so happened that we're operating here on Madam's Mayui authority, and we have our orders to maintain the security here. So that means, we can do anything we want, smarty pants. Get them, roared Darius. His men rushed to Centurion, Haruka and Michiru, but the 3 shadow warriors opened fire with their handguns, killing them. From their side, Kuribayashi and Tomita also fired their rifles, killing several of Darius' men. Darius was left alone, as he was now shaking with fear, see, that his men were been killed by these other worlders. Centurion then walked to him and slapped the handcuffs on his wrists. The Countess want to have a word with you, he said, you're coming with us. Soon, in the same room with Countess Mayui, there were several men gathered on the floor. And so you see, gentlemen, said Centurion, walking between the men on the floor, guarded by several soldiers, and Countess, Pina, Rory, Lele, Tuca, Arpeggio and several other knights, maids and soldiers, Mr. Darius here has made a deal with Callis Hoba. If he would be able to capture Italica and propose himself as the new lord, he would change the laws that prohibited salvary in formal lands. This would allow Slaver Guild to freely conduct their business by enslaving all the races that were living within the principality and sell them to Sidera. This is a real serious crime you've committed, You four, said my UI, I demand to know your motive. One of the men get up. You wanna know our motives? He snarled, because your father has forbid us to conduct our business. He was always been an idealist, always helping those demihumans. Do you know how many money Italica has lost because of his prohibitions? We've lost billions of denaries. Billions. My father may had his problems, answered my UI, but he was right about defending the population of our lands from your kind. You only care for your pockets, not the people's life you've ruined. And you've forgot that I'm the host of the city, and nobody goes against the host. She then turned to Headmaid Kane. What is the punishment for treason, Miss Kane? She asked. Death, madam, answered Kane. Agreed, said my UI. She then turned to the prisoners. I may be young, she said, but I'm no weakling. I will not allow my father's deeds to go in vain, and I will always uphold justice. Let it be known, that from this day, the Slaver Guild is now banned from formal principality forever. I want all their houses in our lands demolished, all of their markets burned to the ground, all their slaves to be freed, all their gold given to the people, and the rest of the Slavers been hanged for committing crimes against formal principality. As for you four, I hereby sentenced you to the death. Sir Prime, please eliminate these scoundrels. Gladly, ma'am, answered Centurion. He took out his handgun and fired, killing all 4 Slavers. Take their bodies away and dump them to the sewer, ordered my UI. Scums like these do not have the rights to be buried in our lands. The maids then took the bodies of Slavers and took them away. Well, good riddance, said Joyce, hope that'll put a halt to Slaver Guild's plans to move our people from one place to another. Yeah, replied Scott, but I've got a feeling that the Emperor still has some tricks up his sleeve to prevent us from locating our people. We've may won the battle, but the war is far from over. That evening, members of the 3rd Recon team, Shadow Warriors and Ghosts have gathered in formal mansion. Man, what a spread, Kenny commented, as he and the rest of Tanker 6 crew rolled into the formal compound with the rest of 3rd Recon. The impressive stone building and the well-maintained gardens greeted the combined Japanese-American, as their small convoy made their way into the formal residence and soon came to a stop in the courtyard. The Empire's richest city, well, was the Empire's richest. William corrected himself. Makes sense the rulers here would live like this. And now one of them wants to meet us personally, Santo reminded her fellow Marines. I wonder what her name would be, Puller joked. Remember the last princess we met? Princess Cocktail Drink. Oye, Williams laughed, as the rear hatch of the ACV opened, like Countess Coloratura or something. That would be an odd name. Her name is Countess Mayui of the formal clan, a monotone voice replied. Upon investigation Tanker 6 crew saw Lele standing outside with Arpeggio, Tuca and Rory in tow. She is the leader of the formal clan and was the one who invited us to her home. It is very advisable that you show her some respect since Italica is now an ally of your coalition. Well, duly noted, replied the corporal, just as Atami and his team walked up. So we're here, now what? We wait. Atami replied. We were told once we arrived, someone will come and meet us. Besides, it's not like we can head back to Alnus tonight anyway. Oh yay, Williams answered back. That storm is gonna make all travel between Alnus and Italica closed for 12 hours. Watchtower says it's gonna be going all night between here and Alnus, Kuahara added on. At least we're dry and gonna be fed very well, replied Tomita. Well, it was not like this is something unusual for us, Williams remarked. Besides, I don't think Atami over here would have lasted long outside in the rain. Yay, I could see it now, Shino said with a grin, as the CQC expert began to imagine the lieutenant all wet badly. Actually, he would have been more than able to take the weather and made it to Alnus by himself, Tomita replied calmly. After all, Atami is a ranger. Shouted Shino, looking in shock, he's what? Rangers. Soldiers who have completed Ranger training program in the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force. They are permitted to wear the Ranger badge as proof of their success over the left breast pocket of their uniform. Shino now looked as if she was about to have a major breakdown, as she grabbed her head and wailed in horror. Much to the amusement of the recently arrived ghosts, one of whom had taken out his iPhone and begun to film the now distraught sergeant. You're joking me. That's not possible, the curvy woman wailed on. there is no way in the world that a jackass like that is a friggin' ranger. What is wrong with Atami being a ranger? Lele asked curiously, still at a loss as to why this Japanese sergeant was acting this way. Is it a bad thing? Look, it's not like just anyone can be a ranger, Shino all but screamed back. You have to be really tough to go through the training, and then you gotta be able to prove you can accomplish something afterwards. It's supposed to be a goddamned honor. Rangers are total badasses. And the lieutenant isn't a badass. He. Atami is a mighty warrior then, Rory asked with a smile, as Tuka could not help but to giggle a bit at the news. Atami, who's read novels under a shade and act as a slouch, is a mighty warrior, giggled Arpeggio. The four girls then laughing heartily over the thought about Atami. There's nothing mighty about him, Shino shot back, as she glanced at her commanding officer, who now wore a dopey expression on his face. Don't be in disbelief, said Pepper, we've seen guys like this in the 75th Rangers as well. They appear to be slackers, but are actually really tough. Those kinds of guys, surprised Kozik. Yeah, the ones we would make fun of back when we were Rangers, ASN word Pepper. Oh yeah, those guys, chuckled Kozik, yeah, I remember them. Jerks. But you guys are more believable if you were US Army Rangers, shouted Kuribayashi. Atami on the other hand, is just impossible. Kuribayashi, your superior may be an otaku, said 30K, but he made it into the Japanese Rangers, so he is tough. Well, I guess you really should not judge a book by its cover now, huh? The corporal asked the young woman, who soon realized who was talking to her and immediately calmed herself down. A slight tinge of red on the sergeant's face, as she looked down in embarrassment. So, who is coming to meet us exactly? We're about to find out. Puller replied, looks like someone is heading our way. Sure enough, a pair of maid belonging to the formal household walked up to the group of soldiers and marines. But they were not alone, for walking in between the bunny maid and human maid, was Countess Mayui herself. Upon seeing the royal and realizing just who she was, 3rd Recon fell into line and stood at attention in front of their vehicles. 3rd Recon report is ordered, ma'am, Atami announced, as the Countess approached them. While Tuka and Lele just stood with Rory and watched on in wonder. Mayui just smiled a bit before she replied. You do not have to act so formal around me. You are all guests of mine and as such, I want you all to feel relaxed. But first, let me introduce myself properly. I am Countess Mayui County Formal of the Formal Clan and Sovereign of the City of Italica, and I officially welcome you to my home. Atami nodded before he replied. I am First Lieutenant Yoji Atami of the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force, and there are the men and women under my command. He then motioned to Tanker 6 and said. That group over there are a part of the United States Marine Corps. They are from one of the nations that make up the ANF and were assigned to my team when we finally were able to explore the Alnis Provence. Well, it is a pleasure to meet all of you. Mayui said with a smile. Now, may he head inside to enjoy the meal my staff has made. I am very certain that many of you may be in need of a health meal after today's events. Atami just smiled, before ordering 3rd Recon to follow the young countess and her companions into her home. While at the same time in one of the rooms, Pina has gathered her knights, except for Gray, Alexander and Lloyd. Your Highness, you really understand what consequences your actions would bring, said Bozes. Your father would never accept Italica's independence. They will retaliate with force and what? Answered Pina. You know better than I am that the Empire cannot replenish its forces by just week or so. It'll take months, if not years. By the time they've arrived here, the other worlders would already have the defenses near Duma Mountains and wipe them all out. Besides, we already know that the Empire cannot fight other worlders, they're too powerful. We saw with our own eyes their destructive power and might outside Italica, and we also saw Rory and Centurion fighting together. Fighting against such forces is like hitting your head on stone wall over and over again. So you can forget about any retaliations against Italica. The Empire has already lost 14 legions against them, and that's more than a half of our army. Even if we would be able to gather at least one corps, it'll be just another Godison's disaster. No, even worse than Godison's, because the other worlders are now controlling not only the land, but also the air. They can easily attack Sidera from Alnis without even moving their own troops and burn it to the ground, and we would be helpless to do anything about Are you sure about that, Your Highness? Asked Beefeater. Do you really believe those other worlders can destroy Sidera by attacking from the air? You saw those steel birds dropping iron giants, replied Pina, mentioning mobile suits, and you saw how they attacked from above those bandits during the night. Do you really think they don't have something that could actually destroy the cities? But, Your Highness, started Panache. We've already heard that they've killed the flame dragon, Pina continued, ignoring her. We've been there and saw its remains in Roche Hills. So if any one of you doubting that the other worlders can attack Sidera, then she's a goddamned fool. They can, and they'll do it, unless we can make them to avoid the destruction of the Empire. It's our only way to save our homes, and ourselves. A thunderous silence was in the room, as the noble women seated in grim silence. They knew that all Pina said was true, and they also saw the power of the other worlders. So, as Princess herself said, the only way to save the Empire is to make friends with the other worlders. Otherwise, their own lives hanged on the thread. One false move, and it'll be all over for them. Okay then, spoke Panache, what shall we do then? I don't know, answered Pina. Right now I'm still under the pressure of what I've learned about my father and the Empire. To think that he sended our army into another world, and they acted as some madmen and bloodthirsty animals, killing and butchering innocent civilians. And after that, he started to betray everyone in sight. I could have understand about the vassals or about Italica, but betraying me. That's just how low can you get, proposing me as a bride to that vile man Hoba. I'm getting really sick just to think about it. It's like that nightmare I had before the battle, where I was been one of his slaves. And not only that, he also betrayed you. Does the thought that all of you would become slaves to those bandits disgust you as well? Certainly is, shivered Beefeater. I would rather cut my own head off rather than endure such humiliation. I'd second that, said Panache. I'm a dogger of the noble Empire family. My body belongs only for the man I would truly love. So is mine, said Bozes. Becoming a toy for those scums is enough for me to poison myself or stab my neck with a knife. So, what shall we do then, Your Highness? Perhaps I can offer you some solution, said another voice, suddenly chimed in into the conversation. The knights gasped and turned to door to see Centurion Prime. Sir Prime, gasped Pina. My apologies, Your Highness, said Centurion. I was coming to invite you to the party and heard your conversation with your other knights. So I thought to listen in and perhaps offer you a chance to help your predicament. Predicament? Snorted Panache. You're the one who causes all this. Am I? Centurion raised his left eyebrow. If I remember correctly, your emperor's the one who attacked my world and killed all those people, not to mention taking many of them as slaves. And what about you? Said Beefeater. Aren't you also here to enslave us all? My dear lady, you're obviously once again judging me by your own standards, sighed Centurion. Allow me to give you a hint. In my world, slavery is one of the highest crimes and punished by death. If anyone would even dream about having some slaves, he would be simply shot on sight without any trial. In fact, the only one who practice such barbaric act as slavery are criminals in several countries, which hidden far away in the deserts or jungles. But even they shake about the knowledge that sooner or later the long arm of the law will reach their necks and drags them to face justice. So therefore, my dear lady, we're not intentioned to enslave you or your empire. All that we want is some justice. Justice? Asked Panache. What about your prisoners? Aren't you forcing them to hard labor and build your cities? Perish the thought, answered Centurion. We're not practice something such ridiculous things. In case you didn't know, lady, all our cities were been builded by citizen workers, not slaves. As for the prisoners of war, we act with them according to the laws of Geneva Convention, which dictates several rules of war. Rules? Asked Pina. Exactly, said Centurion. You see, there's a lot of several rules of war in my world that must be obeyed, and breaking them has the dire consequences, usually punished by death. What kind of rules, Sir Prime? Asked Hamilton. Well, for starters, our soldiers are not allowed to kill helpless civilians, explained Centurion. No matter who they are, peasants or citizens are part of the nobility, they must stay unharmed. Secondly, our soldiers is allowed to loot other cities or raping women. Such crimes are considered to be a shame for the soldier of his nation, who by doing this are no better than criminal. And of course, about the prisoners of war, They must be treated equally as fellow soldiers with respect to their ranks. Any kind of a hard labor for them are prohibited, as well as using them as meat shield in combat. Only those, who committed crimes against the people, must be punished, but once again according to the military laws. So, you're saying, that those legionaries you've captured, are been treated equal, asked Boses. Exactly, said Centurion, we even provided medical attention to their wounded and sick. For example, one of the imperial generals Germanicus is now at our medical ship, Mercy, where he's been healed by our doctor. Germanicus is alive, gasped Pina, as well other knights. He certainly is, your highness, said Centurion. And what about his wife, Lady Octavia, asked Pina. She's right now been held in one of our camps for interned civilians, answered Centurion, considering her status as the imperial lady. She is treated well, however, she's not allowed to leave the camp due to her status as interned civilian of the nation, that currently at war with the allied nations' forces. And her daughters, asked Pina again, Lady Agrippina. We've been heard, that they've been killed by the other worlders. My dear princess, I believe what you've heard, was nothing more, than a lie, chuckled Centurion. Currently, all daughters and sons of Lady Octavia are also been held in Camp Augustus with their lady, including Lady Agrippina. By the way, I've heard, that her husband has proclaimed, that because of the death of her wife, he's now in control of her state and lands. Yes, said Pina, he claimed, that now Lady Agrippina is dead, he's no longer has any ties with her, so he inherits her lands by the rights of her marriage. Well, that jerk-off is gonna be in big surprise, when Lady Agrippina returns to her state, chuckled Centurion, I'd sure hate to be in his shoes, when she shows up. You're planning to return Lady Agrippina, surprised Hamilton. Of course, said Centurion, you see, because she's not a prisoner of war and not a military person, she can be returned back to Falmart, as soon as our diplomates agree with the Empire. By the way, are you Panache Fur Kalji? Yes, surprised Panache. One of the prisoners named Tiberius has asked me to give you this, said Centurion, giving Panache a scroll. Panache gasped, hearing the name of her brother Tiberius. She took the scroll and started reading it. To the Honorable Lady Panache Fur Kalji, Knight Commander of the Rose Order. My dearest sister, I am not sure why I am writing this. Maybe that I am starting to believe it when they tell us we'll go home someday. On the other hand, I'm not sure that father would want to hear from me right now. This isn't exactly the glorious homecoming he expected. I know he thought this would be so easy. To be fair, so did I. We were the greatest army ever assembled by the greatest empire the world had ever known. Of course, it was going to be easy. We would win in a week and send home wagons of gold, slaves, and riches and the girls eager to fall into our arms and all the natives in awe of us. We lost before we ever got here. That's the truth. We were like country peasants going to the capital to show how worldly we were. These people aren't like the empire, and it is probably a good thing. They could have easily killed all of us if they wanted. I'm still not completely sure why they didn't. Maybe now might be a good time to tell you about where I am. We call this place, Hardy's Hole. It's an island that's all one big smoldering volcano. The guards call this place, Camp Karen. I asked one of the guards who Karen was, and he told me that Karen ferries the souls of the dead into Hardy's realm. For some reason, they call her, Hades. I think they don't know the gods like we do. There is a priest here. They call him a chaplain, but his god seems a little odd. He's hard to describe. The best I can compare is if grandfather were a god. He gets disappointed when you break his rules but still looks after everyone. At least that's what they say. But they've got other gods that don't seem to have anything to do with him. I think the gods left here a long time ago, and so everyone just has stories about the gods. Maybe they're lucky that way. Anyway, we live in huts assigned according to rank. I'm the lowest ranking of 12 officers assigned to our hut. For a prison, it's actually pretty comfortable. If my cot isn't exactly up to mother's standards, it is still much better than lying on the floor. There is no bath, but there is a shower. Warm water is a privilege. Privileges are granted based on behavior rather than rank, military or social. Likewise, food is plentiful if not Epicurean. On the other hand, not even the lowliest has ever been made to eat molded, rotten, or spoiled food. Viscount Mayo started a riot when he had a rumor spread that these Americans, most of the guards are from a place called America. The rest are from Japan. Japan is the country we attacked. It's like if barbarians had attacked the kingdom of the Elf, not even knowing the empire was right there. Anyway, that the Americans were serving dead demi-humans as food. A couple guards were hurt and so were several prisoners. I don't think the Viscount expected the guards to use lightning to stun rioting prisoners. He also didn't expect Colonel Masters to track it back to him. Colonel Masters runs the camp. She's like you, I think. Not someone I would want to make angry. 2 days after the riot, Colonel Masters had the entire camp assemble, and I don't know how, but she cast Viscount Mayo's voice for everyone to hear, saying how stupid non-humans were and hoping that the riot would kill a lot of both guards and demi-humans. The guards had to keep the non-humans from rioting again and attacking the rest of us, and Mayo was put in solitary confinement. That's basically more like a normal prison cell, for his own safety, they called it. Colonel Masters summoned him to her office just before, and those who saw him afterwards said they had never seen him so pale. But his fate got even worse, when Centurion Prime, the commander of the other worlders, has visited the camp and heard it about the Viscount's riot. He then have Herm transferred to the place called Kamchatka in other country called Russia. I don't know much about it, but the guards told us that this country is one of the largest countries in their world, about sized of an entire Falmart continent itself. And the guards they're said to be so feared, that even the bears scare of them. I'd sure don't want to end up in that place. But back to what my day is like here. They go to great lengths to make sure we occupy our time. They have taught us some of their games and organize huts or groups of huts into teams. Volleyball is popular. It's a game of two sides punching a large ball over a net, and keeping it up until it goes to the other team's territory. It's harder than it sounds, but I'm actually pretty good at it according to the guards. The guards said they would like to teach us another game called baseball, but they can't because of security. Apparently, it involves two teams and one team are given clubs while the other team throws balls at them. I'd rather be holding the club, I think. They have classrooms to teach us their languages. The Americans speak a variant of the High Tongue. Japanese is much different though. The letters are different from anything I've ever seen except maybe Elven. There is a small shop to buy luxuries like the paper and the ink I am using. We earn the money by volunteering for work details. Don't worry, it's nothing dangerous. They say they have laws about how they can treat prisoners. Seems like a hassle, but I'm not going to complain. A few weeks ago they shipped in more prisoners. Have they really taken Alness Hill? It's a silly question since I've talked to soldiers that were there. Shipped might not be the right word for it. For the first time, I got to see how I got here from the outside. They actually fly a giant mechanical dragon and the people are inside it. Probably why they blindfolded us for the trip. Had I known, I probably would have been in a panic. Not like you. I'll bet you would have loved it. From what the newcomers tell me, we've now lost the better part of 300,000 men. I'm going to say something. Father would call it cowardice, but we can't fight this enemy. We'll lose everything if we try. Please don't think me a coward. I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't want to die for nothing, and more importantly, I wake up in cold sweats having nightmares about the Emperor ordering you into battle and you riding your favorite horse, Emperor, into battle with the rest of the order. It always ends the same. I get there after the battle to find you all dead. I'm scared of that more than anything else, Panache. As I said, I'm expecting Father won't understand. He was hoping this campaign would give him something to pretend to be proud of. So he could swap lies with his old friends from his old campaigns and ask which of their daughters were ready to be married without being too embarrassed in front of his friends. Well, I'm not dead. I think that puts me ahead in the competition now. I'm sorry if I sound bitter, but all I want is to see all of you safe, and I don't care about honors and triumphs. I miss you. I hope I will be able to send this letter someday and that it finds you well. With love, Tiberius. When Panache finished reading her letter, she was paled, almost by the color of her hair. She then looked at Centurion. How did you get this letter? She asked. It was delivered to me by the warden of the camp, Colonel Masters, said Centurion. He said that one of his prisoners, Tiberius L. Calgi, has asked him to give this message to me, so I can deliver it to you, Miss Calgi. Then he's still alive, gasped Panache. Yes, although he's now a prisoner of war, answered Centurion. He's now been held at Iwo Jima's Camp Karen. But Tiberius is not a soldier, protested Panache, he's just a conscript been dragged into auxiliary forces. My father insisted to have him join the Imperial Army instead of Rose Order, that's how he ended up in those legions that was sended to Alness Hill. I see, said Centurion, well, I think, I can arrange for him to change his status to civilian and been transferred to Camp Augustus, under care of Lady Octavia. You'll do that, surprised Beefeater, for your enemies. Whoever said that we're enemies, smiled Centurion. But, I thought, muttered Bozes, looking confused. Ladies, haven't you heard a phrase, yesterday's enemy can become a new friend today, said Centurion, just because you've acted so hostile to us, doesn't means that you were the real enemies. We call it a little misunderstanding, that's all. Besides, we've fought side by side against those bandits, so that makes you our allies, not enemies. And just because you're from Empire, doesn't mean we have to be so hostile towards you. So, we can be friends, said Pina, with hope in her eyes. Why not? Answered Centurion, now, shall we join the others? I believe, your men there are getting lonesome and worried about you and your knights not showing up at the party. I agree, Sir Prime, said Pina, shall we go then? I can't remember when last I ever felt so full, proclaimed Santo, as she and the rest of 3rd Recon made their way from the dining room and towards the main living area. I don't think I would be able to eat for the rest of the week. I have to say, it was rather good, Puller added on, maybe even better than your mom's cooking, Punjab. Ah, blasphemy, the corporal shot back. You better hope she never hears you say that. Puller just laughed just as the group entered the living area, and when they did, Karata froze in his tracks. For there, standing in the large room, were 4 more of the Countess' maids. One of whom happened to have cat ears and a tail. Good evening, everyone. One of the maids, a human girl with short black hair, said with a smile. As she greeted 3rd Recon as they entered. Our mistress has instructed us to keep you entertained for the evening until she arrives. So please feel free to ask for anything. Well, this is interesting, huh, Kenny? Kenny, Williams asked the young private, but he got no reply. Upon investigation, he saw that the young man had gone completely pale and his eyes were now fixed on one of the maids. The one with red snakes for hair, it was not long before the corporal realized what just might have happened. Oh my god. She killed. No, I think he's alright, announced Kurakawa, as she checked the now comatose Marine. Looks like he is just scared stiff. Oh well, never mind. Yar, groaned Haruka, facepalming. Did I do something wrong? Rarea asked with a worried expression, as she saw Kenny in his frozen state. Will he be alright? I guess he could not handle seeing a real life, Medusa. The maid replied. I hate to ask, but how come we are not L statues right now? Shino asked out of curiosity. A question that was now being asked all of 3rd Recon. The maid just giggled as she replied. Medusas do not have such power. We do have the ability to suck the life out of an enemy and even suck out their memories as well. But we do not have the ability to turn people into stone. Well, I guess that clears everything up. Atami said with a smile. You know what? Let's think of this evening as a cultural exchange. Use this time to learn from each other. Sounds like a plan to me, Williams agreed, to which the normally aggressive Shino enthusiastically nodded in agreement. As she now stood next to the tall Marine. It was long before the rest of 3rd Recon agreed to this exchange, and soon, the men and women of the joint unit were freely interacting with the formal maids. Maa. Sergeant Takeo Kurata reporting, my lady. Age 2, single. My hobbies are anime and doujinshi and totally single, Kurata exclaimed rather awkwardly, as he addressed the cat maid he saw earlier. Needless to say, the cat woman was rather amused by this young man's introduction and just laughed as the soldier bowed to her. Seeing this, Michiru giggled, finding Kurata real cute, when he acted so theatrically. Oh, man, laughed Kozik, he's so hilarious. And I thought I've seen all, chuckled Pepper. Amen to that, brother, said 30K. Well, he's been dreaming about meeting with the cat girls ever since he came here, said Min. I guess the kid's finally got his dream come true. I think he meet just more than just a dream here, said Ferguson. Looks like Kurata's falling in love with that cat lady. Can't blame him for that, said Setsuna. The way you fought those bandits was awesome, Mamina gushed, as she spoke with Kuribayashi. I really mean it. I totally say everything. It really wasn't all that great, the CQC expert replied, somewhat embarrassed at the attention she was getting. Don't be so modest, Shino-chan, snorted Pris, you've practically went kamikaze on them. Well, so do you, Sergeant shot back Shino. I did not mean to scare you, my lord, Rhea said apologetically, as she poured another glass of juice for the now recovered private. It's no problem, replied Kenny, now back to his normal self thanks to the Medusa. But tell me, how do your snakes shed? Well, you see, that's my secret. How did they make a fabric like that? Momu, the rabbit maid that had greeted them earlier, said in amazement, as she saw Tuka's outfit that consisted of a white t-shirt and blue jeans. I don't know what they used, Tuka admitted, but it's extremely stretchy and comfortable. To have you here today is truly a great honor, Kane, the head maid for the formal home said proudly. As she sat on the couch with a very uncomfortable Rory, who was not exactly pleased to be getting this sort of attention, the mercy of the mighty Emroy is truly a thing to behold. Something like that, the apostle said flatly, as she really could not bring herself to kill someone for worshipping her. Let alone an old woman. Here you go, Pikachu, said Mayui, giving to Pikachu a fruit. The little Pokemon took a bite and squeaked in delight. Thanks, it's delicious, Mayui-chan, he said. You're welcome, Pikachu, smiled Mayui. So you are saying that your war wagon can drive both on land and on the water? Alexander asked Williams in astonishment, as the older knight had been asking him many questions since he joined the group. Yes, the Marine replied casually. You truly are from another world. You're quite an excellent fighter, Lady Lina, said Lloyd. I've never seen a swordswoman who fights so strongly. Gee, thanks, shyly smiled Lina, you're not so bad yourself, Lloyd. I must admit, Lady Stingray Abernathy, said Gray, I've never met a woman general before. How did you become that way? Oh, I went through a lot from my graduation at West Point, answered Cilia. West Point. Yes, that's the American finest military school. I graduated there as a lieutenant and then joined the Rangers, one of our elite teams. After that, I've went through a real hell of war. Sounds like you've been through a lot of adventures, milady. More like hell itself. I was once forced to kill one of my subordinates for killing the civilians. The command had me demoted for this to lieutenant. Then, I've got captured by a group of madmen, who killed my commanding officer, but I was able to pull a daring escape from their camp and saved a lot of comrades. That's when I've been selected to join the G.I. Joe under command of my friend and later husband, General Clayton M. Abernathy, codenamed Hawk. Wow, gasped Gray, you've certainly one exceptional woman, Lady Stingray Abernathy. I know, smiled Cilia. Then, there was a knock. Excuse us, said Centurion, entering with Pina and her knights. I thought, you guys might need some extra company. No need to apologize, sir, answered Cilia, we were just have a cultural exchange with our hosts. Please, come in. Thank you, Cilia, said Centurion. Commander, shouted Pikachu, as he ran to Centurion, hopped into his hands and rubbed his cheeks with his face. Yes, yes, answered Centurion, patting Pikachu's head, I'm glad to see you too. So, I see, that Countess Mayui has been treating you well, partner. You bet, answered Pikachu. Well, go back and join her, said Centurion, I think I need to check on the others. Okay, answered Pikachu. He jumped to the ground and ran to Mayui, while Centurion walked to Rory. Why the bored face, Rory-chan, he asked. It's because I've been overpraised, lamented Rory. Kane here can't stop praising my lord for blessing the house formal for sending his oracle here. Well, that's what you called the copper trumpets, said Centurion, sitting between her and Kane. You see, for every warrior there's always 3 challenges he must face. The fire, the water and the copper trumpets. Fire is your enemies, water is the harsh nature, and copper trumpets are the fame you're getting after you've achieved your victory. It's the most hardest trial for the warrior. I know that, replied Rory, but I still wish that people should stop praising me so much. It's really annoying. Well, now that you know, why am I preferred to stay in shadows, Rory-chan, said Centurion. Is that why you've named your team, Shadow Warriors, Commander, asked Lele. Not exactly, answered Centurion. You see, long time ago I've formed my team under the name as Freedom Fighters. It was the name of my team of myself, Haruka and Michiru, under which we fought during the Second World War in our world. The Second World War? Asked Lele. Yes, I think, you might read about it back at Alnus, said Centurion. Back then, my team were one of the best team the Allied Command has to offer. Allied Command? Asked Tuka, what is that? It was the Supreme Council of the United Allies, answered Setsuna, the forerunners of today's United Nations, or UN. It coordinated Allies' efforts to defeat the Axis, another alliance of warmongering states, led by Germany, Italy and Japan. Japan? Surprised Pina, but I thought, Japan was now part of the Allied nations' forces. Yes, that's them now, answered Centurion, but back then, their country was been ruled by a group of military officials, who used the ancient Japanese samurai traditions and fanatical belief of Japanese of their emperor to fuel up their ambitions of world conquest. Because of that, they've joined forces with Italy, which was been run by a clown of a ruler named Mussolini, and Germany, which was been controlled by a madman named Adolf Hitler. These three countries have started to conquer other states and nations, thus starting the Second World War. In order to fight back these aggressors, several other nations, Russia, Britain and USA, have joined together, thus forming the United Allies. Naturally, in order to fight such powerful enemies, like Axis nations, it would take several special teams to conduct special operations. Thus the Allies, or Britain and America, has formed their own groups called Commandos, a group of specialists trained to fight the enemy behind their lines. My team, the Freedom Fighters, has fought for Russia as one of their OSNAS unit, or special branch units. The Allies' best team were Sergeant Furies, Howling Commandos, or Howlers. Sergeant Fury, surprised Atami, you mean, he's practically much older than he looks like, sir. That's right, Atami, said Centurion. However, his aging process was been slowed down, when during his almost near-death injury, a scientist saved his life by injecting him with his experimental infinity formula, thus not only healing him, but also slowing down his aging. That sounds incredible, sir, said Tomita. I can also remember the story, when you saved our emperor. What? Gasped Pina. Centurion has saved the Japanese emperor. He sure did, said Atami. The current emperor is his grandson and in deep gratitude to Centurion-sama for saving his grandfather. But why, Sir Prime? Asked Hamilton. Why did you do it? Wasn't he and Japan your enemy? Yes, they was, Miss Hamilton, answered Centurion, but you see, at the end of the war it became clear, that the Japan will lose the war because of the overwhelming power of the Allies. The Japanese emperor did not wanted his people to be destroyed, so he decided to surrender to the Allies. But for the Japanese military junta surrender was a great shame, so they've conspired to stage a coup against the emperor and kill him, thus forcing Japan to continue the war. Fortunately for Japanese, the Allied command has learned about it, so they sent me and my new team, Freedom Falcons, along with Nix, Howling Commandos, who was, by the way, been promoted to lieutenant, to save the emperor. We sure had a hell of a fight near the emperor's castle, but in the end, the conspirators were defeated. Then the emperor himself came out of the palace and personally thanked us for saving his life. And after that, you've convinced him to surrender, asked Pina. Yes, I did, said Centurion. I told the emperor, that sometimes the defeat can become the great teacher, from which you might learn to become more stronger. He took my words and finally decided to surrender. After that, Japan became less military state and focused on more of a people's needs, thus becoming today's nation we all know. That sound incredible. Sir Prime, said Gray, but what about the Axis? Oh, they've been defeated, answered Centurion, although the leaders of Italy and Germany didn't live to see the day of their defeat. Mussolini was been shot by angry Italians, who later hanged his body upside down in shame for failing the nation. Hitler has committed suicide in his bunker, didn't want to face trial for trial. But for the rest of the Nazis and the Japanese militarists, they've all faced trial for their crimes, and several of them were been punished by death of hanging. Are you telling, that this fate might await our emperor? Asked Bozes. Maybe not, said Centurion, considering, that what he committed in Ginza, I'd say he'll be imprisoned for the next 20 years. But that's not for me to decide, that's for judges. Sir Prime, said Pina, standing up, I would like to meet your world leaders and talk to them. I must somehow end this feudal war, before my empire has been completely destroyed. Well, that's a real tough decision you're taking, Your Highness, said Centurion. Tell you what, why won't you join the 3rd Recon team, when tomorrow they'll be going back to Japan? You're going back, gasped Pina. That's right, said Scott. You see, the Japanese Senate, or Diet, is holding a combined meeting with the delegates of the United Nations about the issue of Falmart. The United Nations, surprised Boses, what's that? It's an organization made from the major nations of the world, answered Centurion. They're practically my main employers. Through them, the presidents of Russia and USA, as well the chairman of China, are giving me my orders. My own unit, the G.I. Joe, is operating under the jurisdiction of the UN, and practically, they're the ones who putted together the Allied Nations forces. In other words, the United Nations are my superiors. By the gods, gasped Boses, looking at the Centurion with shock, you mean to tell me that you're practically the most powerful man in your world, Sir Prime? True, nodded Centurion, but with any great power, comes the great responsibility. My responsibility is to secure the peace and order in my world, and I'm determined to make it possible by all means necessary. That's our commander, said Haruka, powerful, but modest. And also quite dedicated to his duties, added Michiru, as we are. Then I must go to this United Nations, said Pina, and tell them about my father's blunders, as well about my proposal to use me as a mediator to make peace between Allied Nations forces and the Empire. I would like to accompany you as well. My UI suddenly announced, surprising everyone. Your Allied Nations forces have saved my city and freed us from Sidera's influence. Seeing that Italica is now working together with the ANF, I think it would be a good idea to meet with some of your leaders personally. Are you sure you want to do this, Madam Mayui? Kane asked her young liege. Yes, I am, replied Mayui, but if it makes you feel better, I do plan to bring 2 maids as well. Very well then, said Centurion, I shall talk about this with General Hazama in the morning. In the meantime, I would like to propose a commander for the Italica's Allied Nations Forces garrison, General Cilia Stingray Abernathy. Me, sir, surprised Cilia. That's right, Cilia, said Centurion, I know you well enough. You're an excellent military officer and a great field commander. The people of Italica respected you. I've heard it, how you've organized the city militia during the crisis time of Operation Bastion. So there's no question about it, Cilia, you're the perfect commander to be in charge of Italica garrison. I've already talked about this with General Hazama, and he fully agreed with me. The order of your position taking has already been signed, Lieutenant. Colonel Joyce and Major Payne are been informed. Tomorrow, they'll await to accept you as their commander. Thank you, sir, saluted Cilia, I won't let you down. I'm sure, you won't, nodded Centurion. Now then, Your Highness, about your proposal to go with us to our world and meet the UN. I must warn you, Your Majesty, that you're gonna face a real powerful obstacles in your way. There are many of the people out there, who will see you as an enemy. Many of them might try to tear you apart. And then there's the Politicians, they're really tricky in our world, and they play by their own rules. You need to be on your toes every time, Princess, one wrong move, and they'll bury you in a pile of shit, thus making you a laughing stock of the world. Are they really that vicious, Sir Prime? Asked Hamilton. Vicious isn't the right word, Lady Hamilton, answered Centurion. Compared to them, your imperial senators are nothing more than babies. These are really powerful people with a lot of influence. They have their ways to control the government and the press, and they willing to achieve their goals with any tricks, even the dirtiest. So facing them is like facing a pack of great white sharks with raw steaks in your hands. I understand fully, Sir Prime, said Pina, but I really insist on going. I must do something to stop this insane war, or my nation will be burned to the ground. Very well, said Centurion, you may select 3 of your knights to accompany you. In that case, said Pina, I shall choose Boses, Panache and Hamilton. They'll provide me assistance, as well my protection. Beefeater, Gray and Alexander will remain here until I return. As you wish, my princess, bowed Gray. Mayor will be done, Your Highness, bowed Beefeater. Excellent, said Centurion. Now, would you say, if we get some sleep, we've got a long journey ahead of us tomorrow. Sounds good to me, said Scott. I'm practically falling apart after last night's battle. I agree, said Mayui. I also need to sleep for tomorrow's trip to Alnus. Pikachu, would you sleep with me tonight? Sure, Mayui-chan, answered Pikachu. Very well, said Kane. My maids shall escort you all to your quarters. Have a nice sleep, Evaon. Thank you, madam, answered everyone. In one of the rooms, Centurion and Michiru were getting ready for their bed. Have to admit it, Michi, said Centurion, taking off his uniform. This is the first time we sleep in the rich house like this without having our guns under the pillow. But it's quite better this way, Kiro-chan, answered Michiru, combing her hair. She was wearing her camouflage t-shirt and shorts. At least we won't have to worry here about some crazies with the explosives rushing in inside and trying to kill us with machine guns. Yeah, chuckled Centurion, amen to that. Well, it's a good thing that Skip, Nick, Joes and Autobots are busy watching our security at Formal Mansion. With them on the job, I feel much safer here. That's good, Kiro-chan, smiled Michiru, sitting near Centurion, because I'm expecting to have a real good night's sleep without any interference. Then suddenly, both of them felt something. Looks like you've spoke too soon, Michi, said Centurion. I think we have a late night visitor. He then walked to the door and opened them. As he opened the door, Centurion was been surprised to see Bozes behind the door in her nightgown. Lady Bozes, he asked, what are you doing here? Sir Prime, said Bozes, can I come in? Sure, why not, said Centurion, stepping aside, please come in. Bozes entered the room, and Centurion closed the door and led her to bed. Please, sit down, he said, also sitting down, while Michiru seated at Bozes' other side. Now, why are you here, Bozes? I cannot sleep, Sir Prime, answered Bozes, because I'm worried about Princess Pina. Oh, I see, said Centurion, you worry about that trip to Japan tomorrow. No, it's not that, answered Bozes, shaking her head. She's been always a best friend to myself and others ever since our kindergarten. She's started to play with us the Knights, then started to train us, then she organized our Order of the Rose. Yet, her father treated her always like some useless commodity. The other nobles at the Empire were laughing at us, calling us as pretty women, playing knights. It was really humiliating, Sir Prime. Sounds like you had yourself quite tough childhood, Bozes, said Michiru. But it gets worse, said Bozes, with tears forming on her face. We've been sent here for a recon, but we didn't even knew that Emperor Molt was playing his own game behind our backs. And as we got into Italica, we fought a hard battle, but also knowing that we can't receive any help from Sidera. And then, we've learned that our own emperor was planning to sell us to those bandits, like some useless servants. It was enough to make us all outrage. We, the noble women of the empire, was to be sold to some common hoods, like rags on the market. Yes, I know, said Centurion, putting his hands on Bozes' shoulders and trying to calm her down. But you didn't know anything about Molt's plans, so you don't need to be so hard on yourself. But I'm worried about the princess's fate, said Bozes, turning and embracing Centurion. If she's returned to Sidera, she might get killed for betraying the empire. Her father already killed 2 of his sons, Marcus and Katie, and he surely won't hesitate to kill Pina. He would do anything to preserve his own power and keeping his throne, even by killing his own daughter. And then there's those politicians of your world. They probably would try to kill her as well for revenge of Empire's attack on your world. She was now crying, tugging her head into Centurion's shoulder. Please, Sir Prime, she begged, save Princess Pina. She's our best friend and the main reason we became what we are today. I would ready to do anything for you, even becoming your concubine. Centurion sighed, rubbing Bozes' back. Then he took her head into his hands. Bozes, he said, you don't need to ask me about protecting your princess, because I would gladly protect her as my friend. And as for the concubine, you should know that my bride would disagree with you about that. Your bride, surprised Bozes. That's right, Bozes-chan, said Michiru, rubbing her hands on Bozes' back. You see, Kiro-chan and I have promised each other that right after our service is over, we would become husband and wife. Oh, Bozes' face turned red from her embarrassment. I'm sorry, Lady Kaio. No need to, said Michiru. Look, Bozes-chan, you don't need to ask Kiro-chan about helping your princess. She's our ally, after all, and we always help our allies. So he'll do anything to help her achieve her goal of bringing this war to an end. That's right, said Centurion, after all, this is what we want, isn't it? Yes, said Bozes quietly, we do. That's good, said Centurion. Bozes, you're quite young and beautiful woman. I'm sure, that sooner or later, you'll meet a man, who you really love. But for now, would you say, that we can call you as our friend? Why, muttered blushed Bozes, thank you, Sir Prime. Good, said Centurion, now, would you say, if we all hit the bed? There's gonna be a long trip for us tomorrow. Oh, and why won't you sleep with us too? What? Gasped Bozes, looking shy, sleep with you, and Lady Kaio. Why not? Answered Michiru, Kiro-chan and I've been helping women, like you, Bozes-chan. He's been sometimes sleeping with other women, helping them in their sleep, and I don't mind. Plus, right now, you need someone, who can be next to you, helping you fight your fears. Muttered Bozes, okay, Lady Kaio. Excellent, said Centurion, now, into the bed, everyone. They've all cuddled in bed, with Centurion in the middle, Bozes at his right side, and Michiru at other. Centurion then hugged both women, and they quickly went into sleep, finally resting this night. Chapter 19. At the other side of the gate. By now, Third Rukon's vehicles had been assembled in front the main entrance of the formal palace, while Mayui's maids had formed a bit of an honor guard to bid their mistress farewell. For her trip, Mayui had selected both Persia and Mamina to accompany her. Which made sense, as Mayui's maids doubled as her personal bodyguards wherever she went. Both Persia and Mamina had special traits and were quite protective of their young mistress. Pina was also being accompanied by Bozes, Panache and Hamilton as her traveling companions for this trip. Standing behind one of the Humvees, the two women nervously climbed into the back of the vehicle and took their seats. With not much space in the other Humvee, Shino had volunteered to give up her seat to allow Mayui and her maids to sit. But now she would have to ride with Tanker 6 and its crew, not that she mind though. Especially since Rory had told her how William Senpei, the personal nickname for the Marine, thought she was alright looking. He notices me, the young sergeant thought happily to herself, and her heart almost skipped a beat when the Marine helped her inside the amphibious 8x8. With Panache's insistence on an escort for Princess Pina, Taylor informed them that General Hazama had agreed the escort would be allowed to carry swords but not to draw them, and that Panache needed to select knights who would not startle easily. Panache selected Marisa, Millet, and Zivana as her second-in-command, led by a knight by the name of Vermouth, a tall lean, blonde-haired young woman who had also been part of Bozes and Panache's advanced scouting party earlier. You're going to have to leave your horses here, Taylor told Panache. There's too much chance of the horses spooking on the way in. More of your iron carriages, then, Panache asked. No, by helicopter, the Iron Pegasi, as Her Highness called them. It will be faster. I'll be flying back with you, so you will be waiting when Princess Pina arrives. Panache grinned in anticipation. She loved speed. She had wanted to find a trainer to teach her to ride a dragon mount, but given Hamilton's descriptions of the Iron Pegasi, this promised to be even more exhilarating. Her excitement only grew as she set eyes on the huge CH-53K King Stallion set down with 2 squads of Marines on board. We will await your safe arrival at Alness, Your Highness, Panache told her liege before boarding the Iron Pegasus, the Marines keeping watchful eye on their guests, though they need not have worried. With the exception of Panache, whose fascination and excitement only grew as the helicopter accelerated to cruising speed, the knights accompanying her were too stunned to do more than feign calm and pray to the gods that the ride would soon end. After a few minutes, 3rd Rukon team was on the move once again and on its way to Alness. Much to the surprise of Pina and Bozes, who were rather unsettled by the sensation they were getting as the Humvee moved along under its own power. While Mayui and her maids were awestruck by the fact they were now traveling in a horseless carriage. Heads up, we got a convoy headed our way, Puller's voice said through the radio system, as the ACV's camera saw the approaching vehicles. Sure enough, a long convoy consisting of Marine Corps 10x10s, Indonesian M35 2.5-ton trucks, Indian Stallion Mk. 4s, Russian Kamaz 4500, German MAN and Japanese flatbeds carrying earth movers, drove past 3rd Recon on their way to Italica. These were just the first batch of reinforcements that were being sent to the new nation and carried not only men and their weapons, but materials to begin construction of the new base. Needless to say, the Falmart natives were rather impressed by the convoy as they passed by. Another hour passed and the convoy was soon approaching the first checkpoint, thus signaling that they were close to home. The Chinese troopers just saluted Ed to Centurion in front, as he and 3rd Recon passes through, as they knew the team was due to arrive in Ginza today and continued on with their duties. "We're approaching Alness Hill," Centurion announced over the radio, confusing the princess and her traveling companion. They were already at Alness Hill. Then, they saw a group of soldiers marching. When they approached the convoy, their commander barked, "Left face, present arms." The whole platoon turned left and saluted Centurion, who saluted back, while continued to drive forward. Moments later, an Indonesian Hind chopper flew low over the convoy, much to the surprise of the princess, and when she looked out the window of the Humvee, her stomach sank. Outside she saw soldiers firing those black staves they normally carried, at targets that had been set up. "What are those staves?" Pina asked in a panic. "Is every soldier in this coalition some kind of wizard?" "No ma'am, they are not using any kind of magic," Lele replied in her same neutral voice. "Those are weapons they call rifles." "Those are weapons?" Pina asked in disbelief. Lele just nodded as she explained. "This is how they work. A small amount of fire is ignited within a cylinder, forcing out a small projectile at high speed. Every single member of the coalition has one of these weapons," Pina asked fearfully, to which the young mage nodded again. "Yes, it's a part of their basic teachings. Every soldier is trained to use one, apparently quite well. They don't even need to be up close in battle to strike down a man," the princess replied, as her thoughts began to drift back to the Battle of Italica. "It's the reason the Imperial Army fell when they crossed the gate and when they attempted to drive off the ANF when they followed them back," Lele explained, her expressionless gaze never breaking with the princess. A low rumbling soon caught her attention, and upon investigation, Pina turned just in time to see a pair of American M1A2s and Japanese 4 Type 74s crest a hill drive alongside her Humvee. "Are those steel elephants?" she gasped. "They call them tanks," Lele explained. They really are from another world," Pina said frightfully, as she began to have images of these weapons being used to level Sedera. "And all this, because of my father decided to march his legions across the gate." "Oh, father, what in God's name have you done? I think the Americans would say, 'Cause your empire done fucked up," Rory replied with a passable American accent. Much to the surprise to everyone who heard her. "The empire really stepped on the griffin's tail when they crossed the gate," said Lele. "Mind your mouth, girl," Hamilton warned the mage. "It's not so wise so speak in such a way about the empire, especially in its time of crisis. My tribe roam where it pleases, Lady Hamilton," Lele told the knight. "We do not, nor have we ever answered to the empire." "She has a point, Hamilton," said Pina. "We can control a nation by force, but we can't control what they think no matter what we do. My father had started this war, and although I first believed that the empire would be victorious in the end, now we must face the harsh truth. The empire had started a war with an enemy we could not possibly defeat. Just look outside and see for yourself. Do you really believe we have something to counter those things? Even if we put an armor on trolls and ogres, it still wouldn't be enough to defeat those tanks. They'll simply obliterate our forces with just few shots. Even if we recruit magicians from Rondel or dwarves, it'll only prolong the agony. Now our only hope is that we could convince the leaders of the other world to seek peace as soon as possible. That is the main reason why I decided to go here." "Your Highness," asked Bozes, "are you really sure about that?" "What else do you think?" replied Pina, pointing outside. "Do you still believe that what they tell us about the other worlders are nothing more than a lie? Well, here's your proof, live and personal. And something keep telling me, we didn't even saw the half of it." Eventually 3rd Recon entered the base, and Pina and he knights gasped at every new vehicle they saw. Mobile artillery, mobile SAMs, AA guns, and a new variety of tanks that weren't present at Italica. Soon they came upon the command building, where not only an honor guard waited for them, but the commanders of the operation stood as well. Upon exiting the Humvees, the assembled officers saluted both Princess Pina and Countess Mayui as they made their way into the building. Sir Prime, how many soldiers does the ANF have in total? Asked Pina. Centurion had to think about this for a moment. Most of the soldiers she saw here weren't meant to be part of the task force Ginza, they were support personnel, administration, supply and the like. But it was also true that many of what she saw here were meant to be part of the task force, and those would be joining the rest of the ANF on the other side of the gate. Well, right now the task force Ginza is 92,000 strong, but there are also plans to bring it up to roughly 100,000 before we start thinking about brining more troopers. 92,000, gasped Pina. And how many soldiers do you have in your world in total? Centurion was a little hesitant to answer this question as not all of the world's military would be brought against the Empire. But he knew that being honest would scare her more, but he never got the official numbers of the entire military force combined, so he would have to guess it. Let's see, some of the largest nations have about 3 to 4. I'd say roughly around 20 billion soldiers, he said. 20 billion. It was the last straw for Pina, as she promptly fainted. Your Highness, cried Hamilton, grabbing the unconscious form of Pina. Wasn't expecting that, said Centurion. Scott then commented and took Pina in his hands. I'll take care of Princess, sir, he said. Okay, Scott, said Centurion. Then he turned to Boses, who wasn't in much better shape mentally but thankfully hadn't fainted. 20 billion, she muttered with her eyes dull from shock. Oh, great, looks like the blonde almost fainted as well, groaned Centurion, then taking Boses into his arms. Come on, let's get these two girls into the house. Hamilton, please come with us. Yes, Sir Prime, said Hamilton. As they entered the building, many officers inside were surprised to see Centurion and Scott carrying two beautiful women. Some of them made jokes about Centurion and Scott's carrying two brides, but Centurion then annoyingly told them to get lost, and they leaving Centurion and Scott alone with their female companions in their hands. Christ, these women are so touchy, sighed Mitchell. Looks like you've really scared the shit out of her, sir. I know, I only said that our current force is about 92,000, replied Centurion. Why then she reacted so nervously? It's because our Empire forces is only 50,000 strong, Sir Prime, answered Hamilton. Even with the mass recruitment or mobilization, our Emperor could not bring up such numbers. Not to mention your other quote about 20 billion soldiers. That's even far beyond anything the Empire could muster. Whoa, you mean that you guys had only 50,000 regular troops? Surprised Scott. Man, your Empire is a real small fry, compared to us. Back then, we had the help of our vassals and the auxiliary troopers, said Hamilton, but now, with the destruction of most of our legions and the vassals running their backs on us, we're practically down to even less. In other words, your Empire is all screwed. Concluded Centurion. Well, come on, let's put them in the guest room, where they can wake up. In a very short time, the King's Stallion landed at Alness Base, dubbed Fort Defiance by those in the American contingent. After that, Taylor was ordered to report to Colonel Lowe for debriefing, while Pina, Boses, and Hamilton were escorted to General Hazama's office, and Kurikawa and Shino showed Panache and her knights to guest quarters. Hours later, Pina and her companions returned from their meeting with General Hazama. We need to start peace process, right away, said Boses. What? Gasped Panache, are you really that serious, Your Highness? I am, answered Pina. Just think about it. Sir Prime has told me that their army here is about 92 soldiers strong, and they can also muster 20 billion soldiers more. 20 billion? Panache and her entourage was shocked to hear such news. Are those really the full strength of the other worlders, Your Highness? Even worse than that, shook her head Pina. According to Sir Prime, that number only include the soldiers of the big three combined, but the rest of their allies could increase their numbers even more. And that's only the number of their soldiers without mobilizing the reserves. So, you telling? Asked shocked Vermouth. Exactly, said Pina. Even if we could summon all forces from the Empire, even if we could recruit the demi-humans, the former vassals, the warrior bunnies and the rondel magicians, it wouldn't be still not enough to defeat the other worlders. And that's not counting the fact that they've already had us outclassed with their weapons. With their almost infinite numbers, we could face an absolute annihilation. That's why we must seek the way to reach peace, or it will be the end for us all. So my decision stays firm. We must go to the other side of the gate and meet the leaders of the Big Three. Sir Prime told us that they would be present at the UN meeting tomorrow, and he's already arranged a meeting for us with the presidents. Your Highness, said Millet, we worry about your safety. I understand that, answered Pina, but Sir Prime has assured me that he will take care of my security tomorrow. You and others with Vermouth must stay here and wait for my return. As you wish, Your Highness, bowed Vermouth and her knights. In the meantime, Lieutenant Taylor had been informed that in the morning he would accompany Pina's group along with Centurion Prime's group, who's also going to Tokyo for a special meeting of the UN. Meanwhile, with some free time at hand, most of 3rd Recon went their separate ways to try and relax. The sun had long since gone down and the rec centers were overpacked with soldiers and marines who were just trying to blow off some steam after a long day. But one would not find Williams playing another round of Fortnite with the rest of the men, as the Marine contented himself with laying on Tanker 6 and taking full advantage of the Wi-Fi network which had been recently installed in the base. He too would be going to Tokyo to testify before the UN Special Commission, a fact that made him a bit nervous. Do you want some company? He heard a voice call up to him, a very familiar voice. Sergeant, the Marine addressed the young officer standing below him. Please, you can call me Kuribayashi-san. The CQC expert replied, albeit a bit nervously, are you busy? Though a bit hesitant, the corporal helped the young woman up and soon, the two of them were seated on the ACV. So what are you doing? Shino asked curiously. Nothing really, replied Williams, just checking some messages from the family. Need to check in when I can or my mom won't let me hear the end of it. Shino could not help but to giggle a bit as she replied. I guess that's one trail all mothers have in common. She sounds a lot like my mother and stepdad. Sue, how long have you been with the Marines? The corporal began. Well, I joined right after high school. Really could not afford to get into college at the time, so I figured I could do my service and take full advantage of that GI Bill once I left, which will be next year. After that, you're becoming a fireman, Shino questioned, and go to college. Yay, basically. Williams laughed back. A headless chicken will have nothing on me after the service. The young sergeant could not help but to giggle at his response, as she laid next to the Marine and looked into the night sky. So what about you? The Marine asked. What's your story? Why did you join the JGSDF? Shino just shrugged as she replied. I don't know. My family always told me that I was always aggressive, figured that the best place for me would be in the army. Might stay in for the long run, really can't see myself doing anything else. Oh, well that makes sense. Williams replied, if you have a special trait, might as well have a job where it could be useful. But you ever thought what you would do if you were forced to leave the SDF? A plan B. At that moment Shino froze and went into deep thought. All her life she wanted to be in the military, but never once did she ever think about what she would so if she were to leave. There was her family's martial arts school, but she really thought about doing anything else with her life. Truth be told, the idea of being anything else rather than a soldier scared her. She was afraid about what life could be like if she left the military, yet here was a Marine who was waiting patiently to leave come next year. Well, I haven't really given it much thought. Meh, don't worry about it too much. Williams told her. You have your entire life to figure that out. I guess. The young woman replied, as she eyes soon locked onto the Falmart moon. You know, I was talking to one of the refugees about the moon. They say that up until a few years ago there used to be an image of a horse's head on it, and that legend says that it was a horse with wings and a horn that would raise it into the sky every night. Yeah right. The Marine chuckled. And there is another horse that raises the sun too. Achoo. Is something wrong, Luna? Princess Celestia asked her younger sibling. No, I am fine. Just something in the air I think, the Princess of the Night replied. But inwardly the alicorn did not want to admit that she felt as if a pair of bipedal creatures were talking about her and her sister at that exact moment. Are you saying that we also come with you, Commander? Asked Rory. Yup, said Centurion. You, Lele and Tuka were the main witnesses of the Flame Dragon's attack. That's why you need to be at the meeting of the UN Commission to testify about what happened during the dragon's attack, as well about the refugees' conditions. Then what? Asked Lele. Well, I thought, we could give you some knowledge about our world's culture, replied Centurion. I can arrange the little trip around the big three countries, so that you could understand more about the people on the other side of the gate. You mean, we can visit the United States of America, gasped Tuka. In Russia, said Lele. In China, said Rory. Precisely, answered Centurion, plus, it'll be a great chance for you to meet other people as well. Yay, shouted happily three girls. Hey, that's not fair, grumbled Arpeggio, why should only Lele go, and I'm not? Because somebody needs to stay here and do more work, Arpeggio, reminded her Mimosa. But Sage, pleaded Arpeggio, don't you see? This is the opportunity of the lifetime. We can go to the other world and gather their knowledge to increase our knowledge of magic. Look, Arpeggio, said Kato, as much as I would love to go myself, I'm too old for such travels, and so is my wife. Besides, Lele has been working with these people for quite long, and she's catching knowledge more faster than you. Besides, you need to work on those books you've been helping Mimosa to translate, and she couldn't do it by herself. That's right, said Mimosa, even though I am a sage, I'm still an old woman, who cannot handle this much of a work. So, I'm gonna need your help, Arpeggio. Arpeggio just sighed in defeat. Another score for Lele. Why does she always been one step ahead of me? Because I prefer to learn things by natural ways, told her Lele, thus adding more salt to Arpeggio's wounds. Meanwhile, Min visited the place, where Helena was staying, and told her about their battle in Italica, as well meeting with Countess Mayui Formal. I already know, she's here, said Helena, I've seen Mamina there with her. Is she's going with you to the other side of the gate? She is, replied Min, and you could also go with us. No, shook her head Helena, I'm afraid, that my appearance on the other side of the gate will only cause trouble, people out there might start to crowding around me. Besides, with Princess and her knights here, I'm not sure I want to be seen in public. Don't be afraid of that, snorted Min, you're under protection of the Allied Nations Forces Authority, so there's no way those Imperials might lay a hand on you. I know, replied Helena, but there's also another reason, why I don't want to go. I'm working on the flowers, that will make our place here more comfortable. The engineers didn't do much about to improve our stay in Alnus. Well, that's the main problem with the military, said Min, they're concentrate more about the practical staying, not comfort. Very well, you've made your point, Helena. Tell you what, why don't I bring you something from other side to improve your bussiness? That would be delightful, Lou, smiled Helena. Back at the base, passing Atami's open door, Taylor noted Lele asleep on the first lieutenant's cot and Atami fast asleep beside it. He gently closed the door. He had plenty of work still to do before he hit his rack for the night. Ambassador Linda Hernandez set the phone back on its cradle and looked up at her visitor with a smile. Looks like we've finally found the opening we've been looking for. William Russell, special representative of President James Marshall, nodded. It's damn well about time. The boss in Washington is getting restless, considering the UN's scheduled meeting. Is he'll be arriving tomorrow? Asked Hernandez. Yup, nodded Russell, with other two big guys as well. Sounds like it's gonna be a UN meeting of the century. Well, sighed Hernandez, let's just hope we play our cards right and not screw up, or the president will have our hides. Although beset with a mix of anxiousness and trepidation to cross the gate, it was urgent for Princess Pina to learn as much as possible about the Pacific Allies. That they had the power to dominate the empire on the battlefield had been demonstrated to her in overwhelming and exquisitely, terrifyingly choreographed detail. But Pina needed to know more if she was going to have a chance at salvaging this situation. A small portion of her mind holding out a hope that if she survived this, she might learn what they could do for the empire. If they were so inclined, Pina reminded herself, the empire hasn't exactly been making a good impression, not that the empire ever cared about what other nations thought before. But we have to now. No, not we. I must succeed. Whatever it takes to stay their hand. Pina had considered sending one of her knights immediately back to Italica with a brief report on what she had learned so far, but rejected that plan since Pina could picture the Senate losing their collective minds in panic and demanding one final overwhelming attack on the barbarians. Such a move would not only result in the destruction of everything that remained of the Empire's army but destroy a generation of the Empire's sons, and then, thoroughly convinced the Empire could never be trusted to seek peace, the Pacific allies would sweep over the Empire and destroy them, Pina was quite certain. Or perhaps her father and the Senate would regard her report as the panicked delusions of a little girl playing at war, and she would be told to let those who truly understood these things do their jobs. No. She needed to learn as much as she could first, and then she had to figure out how to make the Senate and her father understand a truth even the more peacefully inclined members of the Senate would not wish to hear. At Pina's side, Hamilton, Bozes, and Panache stood, with the other 4 knights in rank behind them. Panache resisted the temptation to fidget in her dress attire. If the train had reached Italica before all this, she could at least have argued for the unit's ceremonial armor rather than this ungainly thing she now wore, but that was not to be, and she would have to make the most of it. She did note with a mix of amusement and sympathy that Taylor looked equally uncomfortable in his uniform, which he called dress blues. At least the garb Panache now wore was not as uncomfortably hot as Taylor's uniform appeared to be. What she did not know was that Taylor was thanking his status as a junior officer and thus would not be required to carry the Navy sword in case he had to don full dress. In truth, he did not wish to be embarrassed by carrying a pretty little sword with no edge, especially not in front of Panache. Presently, they were introduced to Colonel Potter. Here was a man who exuded calm and command presence despite his short size and grandfatherly face. "Welcome to the 407th, Your Highness. I know you must be anxious to get this done with, and we'll try to expedite things as best we can. In the meantime, my second in command," Potter nodded to the tall, affable-looking man next to him. "Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake will be happy to show you around our little outfit, and I understand there's a need for good horses heading back home. That's more my expertise than any of these younger folks around here, so I'll personally be overseeing that." Princess Pina nodded. "Thank you, Colonel. Panache is our best rider, so as soon as she is free to do so, she will see to selecting appropriate mounts for our return home. Perhaps Lieutenant Taylor could be of assistance," Shino suggested with just a touch of a smirk. Taylor noted with tightly controlled irritation that Itami was practically grinning at this. "I'm afraid that's outside my skill set, Sergeant," he said carefully. "Of course I'll be happy to help in any way I can," he added quickly, not wishing to sound as if he was trying to avoid being in Panache's company. Well, this suddenly got awkward. "Of course, Lieutenant," Panache replied, attempting not to offend. "We would welcome your accompaniment." Shino nodded in self-confirmation, while Colonel Potter shrugged, aware that there were undertones that he was not privy to. It wasn't his concern. "Well, then we'll get you two on the top of the queue," Potter agreed. "Well, let's get moving, shall we, Your Highness?" "By all means, Colonel," Pina agreed, eyeing Panache curiously. There was a certain touch of redness in her cheeks and in Taylor's as well. Did something happen? Did part of my other plan actually work? I will need to discreetly inquire with Panache later. But that was for another time. They followed Colonel Potter into the hospital, and soon the examinations were ready to start. Colonel Potter introduced them to Captain Pierce in his capacity as chief surgeon and Major Houlihan as head nurse. And assisting them will be Corporal O'Reilly and Specialist 4, Parna. Potter waited for any sign of reaction to Parna's presence. Princess Pina took careful note of Parna, including the fact that she wore the same uniform as many of the people she had seen here. The message was quite clear: Parna was to be considered and treated as one of them. "Corporal O'Reilly," Pina bowed her head in acknowledgement. "Specialist Parna, we appreciate your efforts here today." Pina made it clear to her own people how she expected them to behave. Though the idea of allowing a non-human to wear the same uniform, thus implying that she had the same privileges, was something that could never happen in the Imperial Army. Pina reminded herself again that these people were different, and they also were too dangerous to risk insulting. She and her people needed to learn about these people, not foolishly antagonize them. At this point, Colonel Potter seemed satisfied to step back and allow his people to handle matters. As promised, Taylor and Panache were processed first. As he had in Yokosuka, Taylor volunteered to allow their visitors to watch just exactly what was involved in this kind of examination and pointing out that their exams would have a good deal more privacy. Once completed, Taylor stood aside and waited as Panache stepped forward and her exam was carried out with the proper degree of privacy and without incident. Ignoring the eyes following them, the two followed Colonel Potter out to where the surviving satyr and horses were being kept. "This way, folks. I've already got men waiting for us," Potter told them. With Captain Hunnicutt and Nurse Kelly and Captain McIntyre and Nurse Ginger Bayliss also joining in, the remaining exams were completed in short order. All that remained was for blood and culture samples to be processed. Corporal O'Reilly taking custody of the samples. "I'll get these to the lab right away." Radar then looked to Lieutenant Colonel Blake. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "No, Radar, I think that will be all for now. You and Parna can go." "Thank you, sir, I should go relieve Klinger." "You go ahead then," Blake told Radar and then added an afterthought. "By the way, Radar, how are the language lessons going?" "Oh, good, sir. Parna is even already teaching me some of her language." O'Reilly considered. "It's tricky though. You gotta follow some really soft tones and I'm not used to how to form the words off my tongue. I can't shape the sounds right yet." "We will practice with tongue today," Parna stated, her focus on Radar blocking out everything else. Trapper John McIntyre grinned. "Be gentle with him, okay? Have fun, kids," Hawkeye chimed in as they left. Henry Blake shook his head and suppressed the desire to roll his eyes at Pierce and McIntyre but then returned his attention to Princess Pina. "Now if you'll follow me," he invited. "Your Highness," he addressed her, "we would like to give you a brief tour of our little outfit." "Thank you, Colonel Blake," Pina agreed. "This way then," Blake invited. "Just one moment, Henry, if you wouldn't mind," Trapper interrupted. "I need just a moment to consult with my colleague," he said, pointing to Hawkeye. "Promise, Henry, it will only take a minute." "Well, make it snappy, McIntyre." "We promise," Trapper repeated. He then whispered to Hawkeye and pointed to one of Pina's knights. "No kidding?" Hawkeye asked. "I'm serious," Trapper repeated. "Well then, we'll just see, won't we?" Hawkeye told him, both men smiling in shared amusement as Pierce walked over to a glass sitting on the counter. "That better not be what I think it is, Pierce," Henry warned. "Relax, Henry, I was just finishing breakfast when Potter called us all in. And I promise I only ate the olive," Hawkeye replied, swirling the contents of the glass as he walked over to one of Pina's knights. "My, you're a very lovely young lady. Would you tell us your name?" "Vermouth, daughter of Count Idrius," the tall, blonde knight replied. "Well, then Vermouth, daughter of Count Idrius, I must say that's quite a mouthful. You really need a business card for that," he told the perplexed knight. "Hold this please," he handed her the glass and grinned. "You're right, Trap." Vermouth holding a glass of gin. "And the perfect martini is born." "Oh, very cute you two, can we hold off on the comedy hour?" Blake sighed. "Who's laughing? Mankind has been searching for the ultimate martini for ages. And now the search is over. Because this is something I'd like to drink in every day." Pierce turned to the confused knight and gently took the glass from her hand and passed it to Trapper. Then Pierce bowed with just a little flourish of the arm and wrist. "Thank you, my lady. Your grace in all of this is a delight to behold. You've got some real social class." He turned from the still puzzled but now blushing knight to the perpetually puzzled if kind-hearted Henry Blake. "All done, Henry. I think we can move along now." "Gee, thanks, Hawkeye. You know I could have sworn I outrank you." "You do, Henry," Trapper replied. "But you're too good an egg to hold that over us." "Like I said, thanks," Henry said with resignation and then turned to a perplexed Princess Pina. "As I was saying, if you'll follow me." "Of course," Pina agreed. She looked over at Atami, Tomita, and Kuribayashi but saw that the JSDF people were seemingly as puzzled as she was over this behavior. These Americans were Taylor's people. Perhaps he might have been able to make some sense of this, but he was off with Panache. Well, nothing to be done for it. At least no one seemed hostile. "Not to brag, well maybe just a little," Henry told them, "but we have a 98% survival rate once a patient reaches our door." "And Imperial soldiers?" Hamilton asked. "Once they get here," Pierce answered directly, "their patients same as ours. And we do our best to keep them alive no matter what uniform they had on. Your people, our people, that's not important here. What's important is doing everything we can to keep these kids alive. Your people follow Hippocrates' oath to an enviable degree, Hamilton acknowledged. We're doctors. Either you believe in the value of a life or you don't. It's not a concept that allows for exceptions, B.J. Hunnicutt replied. Hamilton nodded in consideration. May we see our soldiers? Pena asked Blake directly. I don't see why not, Henry agreed. Maybe if you could get them to calm down a bit, Hawkeye suggested. It's really not a great thing to have armed guards stationed in our post-op to make sure these kids don't keep trying to hurt themselves, the doctors, or our other patients. Of course, Captain, Pena agreed. The group proceeded to the post-op ward where Core was using very strong language indeed to a scowling Satyran who reluctantly stopped pulling at his IV. Pena suppressed a blush at the words used and Father Mulcahy, who had been conversing with another patient, was wide-eyed in surprise. She sure told him, B.J. remarked. Yeah, but what? Blake wondered. Father Mulcahy removed his glasses and wiped the lenses. Setting them back in place he sighed. Well, it's been a few years since the seminary, so even if the local Latin hadn't drifted a bit, I'm just a little rusty, but I think she was saying something about being stubborn and also casting aspersions on his father's mating habits. Pena nodded. More or less. The exact phrasing was a little more descriptive. She then switched to popularity and addressed the annoyed young Satyran soldier. What is your name, soldier? The soldier's intended next scornful reply stuck in his throat as he recognized the armor of Imperial Knights and realized who was addressing him. As he reflexively swallowed, he recognized now also the garments of the priestess of Emroy. Your Highness, Your Eminence, he stammered. I am Decanus Decius L. Valoris. And have you been mistreated? He wanted to rail at the indignity of being poked and prodded by these savages and being made to share space with lesser beings as well as being addressed by that siren, daring to speak down to him simply because her new masters considered her equal to them. A degenerate race to be sure. He hesitated. The stern look in her Imperial Highness' eyes told him that this would not be an acceptable answer. No, Your Highness. Pena nodded. Very good. Maintain your discipline, but remember that the Empire needs live soldiers, not dead heroes. Any man who puts personal glory above the needs of the Empire is a traitor, she told him coolly, not shouting but in a voice meant for every Satyran in the room. Yes, Your Highness. Good. All of you will conduct yourself properly. You will behave honorably. You are to observe and learn everything you can about your hosts and will inform other soldiers you may encounter to do the same. Of course, Rory Mercury smirked. If you wish to pass on to Emroy's embrace, I will oblige, she said, shifting her grip on her halberd slightly. Core, Henry Blake asked. What are they saying? Respectfully, sir, I don't think you want to know. Good enough for me, Blake agreed. While the blood of most Satyrans chilled at the apostle's pronouncement, the particular Satyran officer whom Father Mulcahy had just been conversing with let the tiniest smile slip. He addressed Mulcahy in Satyran English, a touch of triumph. Father, I have enjoyed our little chats, but today I'm afraid I must declare the victory. You have yet to prove your God, but the Apostle of Emroy is here. The divine agent of the God of Darkness. Mulcahy smiled. And there you see my God. I'm afraid I don't understand. Came, Mulcahy addressed the centurion by his first name. That young man over there has managed to injure himself several times, attacked doctors and nurses, and he is not alone in either deed and certainly not thought. And yet, with the choice of death offered, we can see he wants to live. Think about that. You all have been face to face with death and yet here you are. Here all of you are, in spite of the sheer odds against surviving the battles, you are here. Despite your wounds, because of the skill of these surgeons, you survived. And because of the grace of God, your Imperial Highness and the Apostle of Emroy are here. And confronted by your own Apostle of Death. I see men who want life. That is the glory of my God. Perhaps, Father. The centurion replied, perhaps. I can ask no more than an open mind, my son. In the meantime, with Colonel Potter's assistance, Panache had finished selecting 10 quality mounts which would be waiting for Pena and her knights when they were ready to return to Italica. You have a splendid eye for horses, Colonel Potter, Panache complimented. Perhaps sometime I will have the chance to show you Emperor. You will never find a better steed, she boasted. I'll look forward to it, Potter promised as they headed back to the hospital. The colonel cast an appraising eye at Lieutenant Taylor. You really don't know much about horses, do you, son? As I told Sergeant Kuribayashi, it's not exactly my skill set, sir. So why did you volunteer to come out here, Lieutenant? Sir, there are times when lacking the ability to help does not excuse one from offering to try. Potter looked between Taylor and Panache for just a moment and nodded. I think I can see that. Just make sure that never gets you in a spot you can't get out of, son. Noted, sir. Potter chuckled to himself. Soon they caught up with the rest of the group waiting in the mess. Parna and Radar were also there, and as they had told everyone, Parna was teaching Radar bits of her own language. Not too loud. Parna reminded him. Ours is a delicate language. It would be like shouting, hello. Radar nodded and carefully and repeated the phrase Parna had given him, letting it flow delicately. Parna beamed happily. Yes, that was very good. What is it I'm saying? Don't worry about that, Radar, Parna told him with a smile. For now we are just working on the shape of the sounds and tone control. Oh, okay. As Colonel Potter poured himself a cup of coffee, Corporal Klinger rushed in with a stack of files. Colonel, Nurse Abel said you wanted these lab results right away. Thank you, Klinger. As he took the proffered papers, Potter introduced Klinger to Princess Pina. Your Highness, this is Corporal Klinger. Klinger, this is Her Imperial Highness, Princess Pina Countilata. She intends to go start talking about getting this little mess over. And then we can all go home. That's right. Klinger fell to his knees with clasped hands. Bless you, Your Highness. Bless you. May your stars shine bright in the heavens. May the desert winds always blow in your favor. And may all of your children be born with small noses. Bless you. Don't mind him, Hawkeye told Her Highness. He's only saying in his very distinctive manner what we all feel inside. Potter meanwhile checked over the lab results. Well, the good news is that the lab work all came back clean. You are officially all cleared to pass through to Tokyo. Thank you, Colonel, Pina replied with feigned calm and confidence. If you can find a way to make peace, Pierce told her. I realize we are technically still the enemy and not your main concern in all this, but you do this, we'll all be eternally grateful. Because, while the air here may be just a little cleaner and the sky a little brighter, it's not a place most of us want to be. No place is ever as wonderful as home. And if you can do this, we all get to go home and I'll be eternally grateful. Pierce smiled with deep sincerity. Then the smile widened as he looked at her in all her knights. His voice louder as he continued. And I promise you, if you do this, when I get home, the first thing I do after sleeping for a week will be to go to a bar and drink in all your honors until I can't sit up anymore. Pierce stepped back as Colonel Potter nodded. Good luck, Your Highness. The horses will be waiting when you get back, and if there's anything else we can do for you, ask. Again, thank you, Colonel Potter. Thank you all. If the gods will it. She looked to Father Mulcahy. Or God as the case may be, then there will be peace. Before stepping into the waiting van, she turned to address Vermouth. Remember your instructions. Return to Italica and discuss this with Gray and Beefeater only. I want the order to remain at Italica at least until my return. Yes, Your Highness. Then it is time. Pina entered the van and Sergeant Tomita helped her with her seatbelt and closed the door. As Tomita got in the driver's seat, Pina prayed a silent prayer to all the gods of Falmart, whose motives she didn't quite trust, the god of Father Mulcahy, whom Pina didn't really understand yet, and any other gods that might be listening that she might succeed in her task. Wow, you look handsome, Lieutenant Hartman, said Kuribayashi, but why the usual uniform and not the blues? Because that is for the formal occasions, answered Eric. For other meetings, we wore duty uniforms. That's right, said Min, who was in his ARVN uniform. We in the Vietnamese People's Army also have similar occasions. Hey, guys, good to see you, said Michiru, as she with Haruka and Setsuna appeared before the gate. Whoa, you look fancy, said Atami, but why such funny dresses? Oh, you mean my Russian Marine beret, smiled Michiru. Well, to tell you the truth, I was been trained as the Russian Marine, then a sailor, then a combat diver. So therefore, I have the rights to wear such uniform. I have the same rights too, said Haruka, since I was been trained by Russian VDV or airborne troopers, I have the rights to wear their beret. Of course, I was more of a pilot than a paratrooper. That sure makes sense, said Tuka. Speaking of which, can I take off this wrappage off my halberd? Asked Rory. Unless you wanna be arrested for carrying bladed weapons, said Setsuna, you wanna go with us. Then play by the rules. By the way, where's Commander and Colonel Mitchell? Asked Lele. They've been given Princess Pina a little tour around the base, answered Michiru. Commander said, it's for showing her the reasons why the Empire has no chance of winning the war. Makes sense to me, said Atami. Fuller was with Williams, now dressed in their Service C uniforms, waited with Atami and his group to cross the gate. Also with them were Rory, Lele and Tuka, who also had been invited to testify at the General Assembly on behalf of the refugees now living near Alness Hill. I still wish we could get this show in the road though, Shino admitted, as she did not particularly like wearing her dress uniform. At that moment, Countess Mayui and her maids arrived in a limo which had been provided by the JSDF. The young child all but bounded excitedly out of the luxury vehicle with Pikachu accompany her. What a wonderful contraption, Mayui exclaimed. Much more comfortable than what we rode in yesterday. My apologies, Your Excellency, said Centurion, but most of our vehicles were been designed to carry troopers and provide them protection, not comfort. Yes, I do understand, replied Mayui, so when are we leaving? As soon as here they come, Atami commented, as he saw Pina, Hamilton, Panache and Boses roll up in another limo provided by the Japanese. The four women had frightful expressions on their faces as they got out of the car, because they could still remember what they had seen during their tour of the base. Specifically the aircraft, the other worlders called the Angel of Death. A nickname for Spectre -2. So I am guessing you enjoyed your tour, Atami asked the royal. It was a enlightening experience, the princess replied, as she still could not comprehend just what she had seen and what she had been told. And now we will be going to your world soon. Once the bus arrives, we will, Scott told them, as he exited the limo, it will be taking us to Tokyo. Then, we'll perhaps visit some other cities, like New York, Moscow or Beijing. Tokyo. Beijing, Boses asked curiously. Cities back home. Atami explained. Tokyo is the capital city of Japan, my country. While New York is in Williams County, America. And Beijing is the capital of the People Republic of China, said Min. And Moscow is the capital of Russia. And we will be traveling to them all, replied Williams, as soon as the bus arrives. Then as if on cue, the lights of a large vehicle soon began to shine through the darkness of the gate as the coach bus that would be Transport NG them soon appeared. Right on cue, said Centurion, well, we better get going, we have a long journey ahead of us. Right, said Atami, just as the large vehicle rolled out of the gate and came to a stop. The Falmart residents were a little nervous about getting on such a large vehicle, well most of them were, as Mayui gleefully hopped on board the bus with Pikachu and quickly found her seat. Atami just shook his head in amusement, before the rest of the group boarded the bus and after final checks were made, the coach lumbered to life again and made its way into the gate. The low rumble of the Cummins engine could barely be felt by the bus passengers, as the civilian-owned coach made its way through the dark void that existed between the two gates. Inside, said passengers, well most of them anyway, settled themselves in for the 40-minute drive to Tokyo, but this seemingly mundane drive was a whole new experience for the Falmart natives. Then again, being in a large, yet comfortable horseless wagon heading towards a whole new world would have that sort of effect on anyone in their position. Sir Prime, Mayui asked, as she turned from her seat and faced Centurion, what is your world like? What is Japan like? I am curious as well, Princess Pina added on, as she too was curious as to what laid beyond the gate. Japan must be a very powerful country to have so many allies help them in battle. Actually, they're not, answered Centurion. True, Japan is a wealthy nation, but they are not the most powerful in our world. Really? Pina asked, a confused expression forming on her face. If Japan wasn't the main power in their world, then who was, then who is? My country, answered Centurion. Your country, surprised Pina, United States of America. And Russia, added Scott, and China. The big three. Wait, said Pina, if their nation is the most powerful, then why is Japan in charge of the ANF? Because it was Japan that was attacked to begin with, replied Tomita, and the reason Americans are helping us is because many of their countrymen were hurt in the attack. as were many people from nations that make up the ANF. Also, let's added the fact that Japan and USA had the Mutual Defense Treaty, said Centurion, meaning that if one of these nations should be attacked, then the other help him as well. And since just so happened that your father was foolish enough not just only attacking Japan, but also killing numerous visitors from other countries, like from USA, not to mention killing the Chinese ambassador, it's no wonder that he's invoked the worldwide rage against the empire. In other words, the empire has not just kicked the hornet's nest, but also stirred up other nests as well. Pina just sank back into her seat with a sick feeling forming in her gut. Apparently her father's decision to go beyond the gate had angered many in Atami's world. But could the expeditionary force her father sent through the gate had caused so much damage, it warranted such a brutal response. My family has always thought the practice of slavery was a cruel fate to force upon another living being. Mayui explained, which is why when we originally founded Italica, we let it be known that slavery of any kind would not be tolerated in our lands at any time. Even when our lands fell under the control of the empire, the emperor at that time allowed us to continue to enforce our law. Though I am afraid that over time, Sedera became less and less interested about our laws. I am just thankful we now have an opportunity to govern ourselves as we seem fit. Mayui glanced at the princess as she finished her statement, causing Pina to sink back into her seat even more in silence. Obviously the loss of Italica still weighed heavily on the princess, and she was still unclear of just how well her father would react when he found out his own daughter had a hand in its sudden liberation from the empire. The rest of the drive was rather uneventful after that, as the group just kept themselves occupied with small talk. Eventually, the bus made to the other side and the Falmart residences had their first real look at the world Atami and his friends were from. The first thing that greeted them though was the sight of numerous guard towers and machine gun nests that surrounded the stone structure, as well as a pair of Japanese Type 10 main battle tanks that had their guns pointed at the gate opening. Concrete walls and barbed wire separated the military garrison from the rest of Ginza, while a heavy steel gate on tracks acted as the only way in and out. But what really caught the girls' attention was the fact that there were still signs of the Empire's ill-fated expedition that could be seen. But eventually the steel door opened and the bus drove into the main encampment that was a part of the Ginza Security Force, which had been established just days after the attack. The role of the GSF was to act as a secondary force in case another incursion occurred, as well as ensure the safe passage of men and equipment to and from Alnus. Eventually the coach bus came to a stop near one of the checkpoints and its passengers were allowed to step off to stretch their legs. It was at this moment the Falmart natives got their first real look at the other world. Amazing, Tuka gasped out as she, Lele and Rory saw all the tall buildings that surrounded them. The air here smells different, Mamina gasped out, as her red eyes scanned the area. Pina, Hamilton, Panache and Boses for their part, were completely awestruck by the sight of so many tall buildings. There were many towers that existed in the empire that were said to be the tallest, but they were easily no match compared to these structure. It was a truly surprising sight was beheld. The entire area around Ginza was turned into a makeshift military base. Several business centers and shops were turned into offices or storage areas meant for military purposes. Many of buildings they first saw were either built with smooth marble stone or concrete stretching high into the sky, some much higher than any building that the empire could build. Pina could see opening in each building showing soldiers sitting at desks or working with paper or some sort of machinery. Pina could see that a wide variety of nations were also stationed here as she recognized the Japanese, American, German, and Russian flags on some soldiers' shoulders. The soldiers' numbers seemed to be limitless as they marched everywhere performing basic drills or combat readiness. Armored vehicles lined the streets waiting to be let through the gate to join the rest of their alliance on the other side of the gate. As her princess stood in shocked awe at the gleaming towers of Tokyo, Panache tried to put herself in the eyes of her brother on the day, now 4 months past that the Imperial Army marched confidently through the gate into a world, unlike anything any of them could have possibly imagined. This city was huge, with towers of glass and iron rather than the comparatively more modest stone, brick, and marble buildings of Sedera. Towers everywhere obscuring what lay beyond. The army's commanders would have no frame of reference to help them understand this place, and to her horror, As she began to pay closer attention to the people living in these towers and moving past on the street beyond the iron fence and the gatehouse, she began to picture how the people here must have reacted to the sudden appearance of an army bent on looting and conquest appearing from out of nowhere. The demi-human auxiliaries had probably run wild in these streets and many legionaries scarcely better. Tiberius would have been sickened by it. He had their mother's heart and kindness, and then the army would have been confronted by the defenders of this land, facing angry warriors whose homes had been violated and who had wielded unbelievable destructive power. She shivered, thinking about the mistake the emperor made by dragging her brother into this needless war. "Is America just like this?" asked Lele. "Depending on where you go," answered Centurion, "America is a vast country with different landscapes and climates. I live, for example, in California, where the climate is so warm, you can go on the beach during winter." "I would like to go there too," said Lele. "Don't worry," said Centurion, smiling at her, "you will." "So there you are," a new voice interjected, as a man in his mid to late 50s and dressed in a cream-ish brown coat walked up to the group. "I am Komikato of the National Defense Intelligence Headquarters. I am here to make sure all of you make it to your destination safe and on time." "So you're public security?" Itami asked the older male. Komikato just chuckled a bit as he replied, "You're so perspective. No wonder you're such a big heroes. It, really want anything," Itami said with a flat tone in his voice. To him, his actions during the Ginza incident was not really a big deal. "Well, not everyone agrees, do they?" the PSIA official replied, as he took out a small book from his pocket. "I did some reading on you. You were second to last for the course for basic officers. Fortunately for you, one of your mates was injured and could not finish. It also says here they wanted to keep you as a sub-lieutenant for a while, but your commander got so frustrated with you after a while that he sent you to Ranger School, and somehow you passed and were transferred to Narashino. Your superiors were content with leaving you as a second lieutenant, but then came the Ginza incident where you earned yourself a promotion for your gallant actions in spite of yourself." "Wow, this guy did his homework," Williams commented, as he looked on at the exchange. "Give the man a gold star," quipped Itami. "An underachiever, juvenile, and those are just the highlights," Komotoko laughed, "and a ranger no less. But tell me, how the hell you became an S. Special Forces. A special Japanese unit created following the examples of U.S. Army Green Berets and Delta Force." "EHH. Shino yelled out in shock, as she once again found herself having a nervous breakdown. Much to the amusement to the two Marines that were with her. "Okay, you get 2 gold stars," Itami gasped out, as if he was annoyed by being outed as Special Forces. "Check it out, you kick one lazy ant out and another takes its place. It's just one of those things of nature. So you are telling me that the military need lazy people? All I know is that I tried telling the colonel that when he was chewing my ass. And you ended up with even more responsibility," the PSIA official replied in amusement. He had to admit, this lieutenant had a very interesting view on the world. "Itami is a very might soldier if he is Special Forces," Williams said with a grin, which caused Rory to laugh and Shino to freak out even more. "Ha ha 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 ha. It's all a lie, it has to be," she screamed with a twisted smile, as the CQC expert held her head as if she was in pain. "Tell me this idiot isn't a ranger and Special Forces." "Oh, but he is," answered Centurion, dropping a final slab on Kuribayashi. "He was also trained with Skip Lang's Delta Force team as part of the joint Japanese-American exercise. He became quite known as Sarah Escape and Evasive Specialist, codenamed Avenger." "Whoa," gasped Williams, "guess that explains why you told Colonel Mitchell to train Itami, sir." "Who else would bring a fellow ghost in shape," smiled Mitchell, "than another ghost?" "No," screamed Kuribayashi, as she madly ran towards the fence. She then grabbed the fence, crying. "Why," she muttered, "how can that lazy otaku has become a ranger, but also Special Forces, and he was been trained by ghosts, and Delta Force? This can't be right, this world is so wrong." Williams then came and took her in his arms, as she was crying, still cannot believe from what she's just heard, while Komotoko just laughed before he said, "It takes a lot of guts to be the lazy one in a group where everyone is working hard. I have to salute you for that." And true to his word, the PSIA agent did just that. All the while Shino openly cried knowing that the biggest idiot she knew, had accomplished much more that she could ever hope for. It makes no damn sense. How does this guy, she gestured dramatically toward Atami, end up in SFG? Is the universe just messing with us? Tell that to Casey Ryback, who was a chief petty officer, a Navy SEAL, and working as just a cook on USS Missouri, snorted Haruka. Whoa, you guys known Chief Ryback, gasped Min. Yup, we fought together with him on the Missouri and when he was coming to Los Angeles on the train, proudly said Haruka. I'll be damned, said Eric, they've been telling stories about that battle on that battleship, how you and Ryback fought against those terrorists, who took over the ship. We sure did, smiled Michiru. By the way, said Komikado, I've did some research on your American and Vietnamese friends here, Lieutenant. For example, Lieutenant, Eric Hartman has graduated in Quantico as Top 10, then deployed in Iraq during Operation Desert Storm. After that, he served several combat missions in MARSOG, the Marine Special Operations Group, during which he met his friend, Lieutenant Min. And all went well, until his trip to Somalia in 1993. The guy, who was in charge of my unit, was an asshole, snorted Eric, always doing by the book and without real combat experience, a real arrogant douchebag, who believed that he's a natural soldier. I warned him about the ambush in Mogadishu, but he didn't listen. Because of that, our squad got ambushed on the streets with the enemies surround us like angry lions surrounds the elephant in the jungle. We lost 4 guys on those blasted streets and 3 wounded, but I've managed to bring the rest of the team back to embassy. Then that jerk-off tried to pin the blame on me for that ambush. I was so outraged, I kicked the door into his office and beat the shit out of him. Then the court-martial came and blamed me for assaulting my superior officer, and that jerk still was blaming me for that ambush. Thanks to him, I was kicked out of MARSOG and forced to become a squad commander in 1st Division. And then there was Yugoslavia, said Komikado, where you and several other Marines got wounded and decommissioned. Yeah, said Eric, we got ambushed by multiple hostiles, who used mortars on us. We tried to fight back, but the odds were not in our favor. Almost whole my platoon got wiped out, only me and 3 other guys were been rescued by medevac. After I've recovered, the doctors said that I'm not fit for active field duties, so they've sended me here, in Tokyo, as military attaché, to keep me out of trouble. But instead, the trouble has found you, Lieutenant, said Komikado. Well, you know, what they say about the USMC, sighed Eric, you've signed your motherfucking contract. Besides, how else would you expect a Marine like me act, when all that shit in Ginza broke loose? Good point, Lieutenant, said Komikado, and there's Lieutenant Min of the ARVN. It's said here, that you've been one of the best soldiers in the Vietnamese army. In there, you became an excellent marksman, who later got involved in Kingdom of Gas Sonica civil war in 1992 as part of the International Task Force Bruiser. During the conflict, you've served together with American sniper Chris Kyle, also known as the Ghost of Chao Phraya River, who also recommended you to his friends at G.I. Joe Ghost Recon Team. However, before your departure to America, your entire unit was been wiped out by enemy ambush. The intelligence of ours there was sloppy, answered Min, they've didn't known, that the village we're going was actually a stronghold of the enemy. Because of that, our unit was been killed, including Chris, who got hit by mortar blast. I was lucky to get out of that slaughter alive. I've been wandering through jungles for days, until I've made it to ours. Once I've returned, I've made my report, and the guy, who provided that crappy intelligence, got demoted and kicked out of the group. And after that, you've went on into America and joined the Ghost Recon, said Komikado. It's said here, that you've participated in operation in Kazakhstan in 1997, prior to your decommission from the Ghost team, during which you've captured General Bukharov and the dictator Makhmudov in Alma-Ata. Well, when the 2 crazed nationalists takes over half of the country and the International Space Center and start threatening the whole world with nuclear missiles, who else would be sended to stop them, before the whole hell breaks loose? And after that, you've returned to ARVN, where later you've been sended to Japan to participate in Tiger Shield exercise, but later got involved in Ginza incident. Not bad, said Min, looks like you've said almost everything about me, but the color of my underwear. Well, we're not that perceptive, chuckled Komikado, then saluted again, Lieutenant. Min, Lieutenant. Hartman, it is my honor to meet you, gentlemen. Your service here improves the relationship between Japan, Vietnam and USA. Thank you, Komikado-san, said Eric, as he with Min returned the salute. Oh, there is one more thing, Lieutenant. Atami. There is someone here who really wants to see you. What? The lieutenant asked curiously. Komotoko just motioned for someone to come out, and when he did, a woman with shoulder-length brown hair, thick red-framed glasses and dressed in an anime-themed t-shirt and baggy pants, appeared and ran towards Atami. Yoji-kun, she shouted. The lieutenant had little time to react, as the woman dove on him and planted a big kiss on his lips. A kiss that was quickly returned, as Atami wrapped his arms around her waist. Well now, Puller remarked, as he and the assembled group looked on in awe. Kiro-chan, said Michiru, is that? Yes, replied Centurion, she is. Well, this is interesting, Williams added, mind introducing your friend? Eventually Atami and the woman decided to come up for air and saw the varied looks they were receiving. Everyone, this is Riza. My wife. Whaat, everyone gasped, as they heard the news. You're married too, Shino suddenly screeched in despair, forgetting the fact that he was both an ranger and S. Well, yeah, replied Atami, didn't I ever mention it before? Shino could only look on in shock and horror. Just why did the universe seem to hate her so much? This isn't happening, she muttered, grabbing her head again. Not only this guy is a ranger in special forces, but he's also married. Calm down, Shino, said Williams, patting her back, it's not that really bad. I've missed Yoi so much, Yoji-kun, said Riza, as she happily hugged her husband. I read every text you sent me. I missed you too, Atami told her, before he introduced her to his friends. Then Riza saw Rory and got excited. She rushed to her with kissy face, but Rory then got scared and hid behind Centurion. Whoa, calm down there, Riza-san, said Centurion, holding Riza, who was literally drooling by looking at Rory. There's no need for you to scare our guests, like that. Ah, but she's so cute, whined Riza, she's absolutely perfect as Gothic Lolly. I must make a doll of her. That woman is a personification of Hardy, screamed terrified Rory. Huh, surprised Atami, who's Hardy? The goddess of the underworld, answered Lele, she controls all souls, that goes into afterlife, except those, who died in battle. I see, but why Rory is scared so much, asked Atami. Yeah, said Centurion, why you're afraid of another god, Rory-chan. She's completely insane, answered Rory, and she's always chasing me, trying to force me to marry her. She's what? Surprised Williams, she's trying to marry a woman. That sounds way too much of LGBT stuff to me, said Puller. Actually, it made a lot of sense, said Setsuna, since Rory is an apostle of the god of death, Hardy is wanted to have the same power over death as well, that's why she's after Rory. Oh, I see, said Scott, something about marriage for more power. Been there, done that. And I'll bet, she's collecting the dolls of Rory to satisfy her lust for her, that's why Rory got so freaked out because of the doll stuff. Well, you don't need to worry about that, Rory-chan, said Centurion to Rory, you see, Riza here is only after your outfit, not yourself. She's only making dolls from anime and manga, that's all. He, giggled creepily Riza, while working on her cell phone, I must download her image. She's doing the same thing as Hardy, shouted Rory again, grabbing Centurion's hand. She's only making your images, not your soul, silly, said Centurion. Now, look, Rory, you're in our world, and Hardy laws does not apply here, so calm down. Speaking of which, Komikado, why did you bring Riza-san here? I figured the hero of Ginza would not mind seeing his wife after so many days. Komotoko explained, even if he is still technically on duty. Well, thank you, relied Atami, as his Riza happily hugged him again. Hey, Riza, said Eric, good to see you. Oh, Eric-san, blushed Riza, nice to see you too. You know her, Lieutenant, asked Tomita. We've met several times, answered Eric. Well, I'm glad to see you are happy to see her, because she will be joining your group on your trip to the Diet and later on to other countries as well. Wait, what? The lieutenant quickly asked the older male, as the rest of the group looked on in confusion. She's coming with us. What's going on, Komikado? Asked Centurion, looking serious. A sad expression soon flashed upon Riza's face as Komotoko began to explain. Recently, we have received credible information that foreign agents may have entered the country. Apparently a lot of countries have become interested with the idea of meeting their majesties in person, and are willing to do anything they can to do so. Including using your wife against you. They came to me 2 days ago. I have been staying in a safe house since. Riza told her husband, referring to Komotoko and his people. I've missed my deadline as a result. Atami just looked at his beloved with a worried expression. Just why would anyone want to hurt his wife just to get to him and the Falmart citizens that were with him? The soldier just sighed heavily as he replied. I guess there is nothing that can be done, I guess. Komikado, said Centurion, have you identified those foreign agents? I'm afraid so, Centurion-san, answered Komikado, It's Shadaloo. Bison, growled Centurion, clasping his fist, I should have known, he would be involved in this. Wherever there's big trouble in Asia, always the Shadaloos behind. Who is this Bison? Asked Lele. The worst person you don't want to meet, answered Centurion, he's a powerful mad dictator, who runs his terrorist organization the Shadaloo with iron fist. He's also gunning to control the entire world by his tyranny. Recently, his Shadaloo has begun to grab one country after another, thus trying to become the ruling power in Asia. He always after for more power to increase his own, and would achieve his own goal by all means necessary. But I've got a feeling, that if Bison is involved in this, so is Baron von Strucker. Who's that? Asked Pina. My oldest enemy, who's have been fighting since the Second World War, answered Centurion, do you remember, what I said about the Axis? Well, you should know, that Baron Wolfgang von Strucker was Hitler's top agent. He was practically the main nemesis for my team, Freedom Fighters, and Nick Fury's, Howling Commandos. He was leading 2 of Nazi's team, first, the Totenkopf, or the Death's Head Squad, and Blitzkrieg Squad, but Fury and I have defeated them more than once. Then one day, Hitler has finally had enough of his failures and exiled him from the Third Reich, but von Strucker was able to survive the destruction of the Third Reich and escape from it with Hitler's personal archive. He used it to build Hydra, the neo-Nazi terrorist organization, then several others, including Cobra, which later was grown into a powerful terrorist army. Then, he united several organizations, including Hydra and Cobra into one alliance, known as Globex, but later this year, he has reformed it into Cobra Empire. Cobra Empire? Asked Pina, does that means, he's now an emperor? Now, what I mean, is that now he calls himself as Supreme Cobra Commander, answered Centurion, he's completely evil to the core, looking to complete, what Hitler has failed to achieve, the world domination. He's the main reason, why we formed Allied Nations Force in the first place. And now, I'll bet, he's after Falmart to claim as his own resources. Why? Asked Pina, our land has nothing this Baron would want. That's what you think, Princess, answered Centurion, make no mistake, Baron von Strucker is after something, and usually it's big. Komikado, I think, we need to increase security about this matter. We've already did, Centurion-san, answered Komikado, we've stationed our best agents and our allies from USA, Russia and China, including the Rainbow Six team, 4th Echelon and the Ghosts team, as well Captain Lang's Delta Force team. They'll make sure that your trip in Japan will go smoothly. Excellent, said Centurion. Well then, I guess you need to get going. The people at Diet with the UN Commission are already waiting for you. After you're staying in Japan, a jet will be waiting for you at Yokota Air Base to take you to the rest of Big 3 countries, the PSIA agent explained. To which everyone returned to the coach with Riza, and after a few minutes, the bus was not on the move and 2 PSIA vehicles providing escort. All the while, Shino was still in the middle of her meltdown and trying desperately to convince herself that Atami was not special forces. It's a lie, she muttered in tears, clasping her head, it's just a dream, terrible dream, it's not possible. Yar, groaned Haruka, listening to Shino's constant babbling, do we really gonna listen to all that bullshit all the way to Diet? Williams then seated nearby and hugged Kuribayashi, to which she hugged him, while continuing her meltdown. What an overgrown child, groaned the Marine. Well, let's get going, said Centurion, we don't have all day. The drive through Tokyo was more intriguing to Pina and the others as there was more color and life in the streets as people went shopping at the various stores. Are they carrying books? Pina asked as she saw a young female girl carrying an arm full of what she recognized as books. That girl. Yes. Atami answered. Can a young common girl like her read? Pina asked. Yes, most of them can. Reading is a required skill in our world, Atami explained. Pina was pressing her face against the window glass as she struggled to see what books they were carrying better, but to no avail. They can write too, Pina gasped. Well yeah, if they can read, they can write, Atami sighed. I never knew a world like this could exist, Pina said, pressing her face against the glass even harder until it hurt. Amazing, Mamina gasped out, as she and the rest of the Falmarties got their first real look at the other world or city. There's so many people. Could be a market of some kind, Rory pondered, as the apostle could only look on in awe at the busy city street and its May shops. Oh wow, Tuka gasped out. Just look at that tree. They place decorations all over that tree. Lele replied. Perhaps they are some kind of good luck charms. Ah, it's so cute, Mayui exclaimed happily, as the small convoy passed a Pokemon billboard that had an image of Pikachu on it. You're even cuter on it than you now, Pikachu. Hey, I'm quite popular with the children here, answered Pikachu, they've even made plush dolls of me. Such wealth, Bozes gasped out as she took in the sights as the bus drove along. Pina on the other hand, did not say anything at all, as her mind was still trying to process just what she was seeing. As the small convoy eventually made their way out of the city center, the Falmart natives continued look on in wonder and gasp in awe of the many sights that made up the massive city. All the while the soldiers and marines tried to answer any and all questions their guest had about the city. After this, a short break for food seemed to be in order. To Taylor's surprise, Atami opted for gyudon. It wasn't that Taylor had any dislike for beef bowls, though one would practically kill for some authentic Brooklyn-style pizza, he thought. Atami, why this place? We're escorting the Imperial Princess and well, not to put too fine a point on it, but if this were Los Angeles and I had us pull into a Taco Bell, that might not fly too well. We only have vouchers for 500 yen per meal. Budget's tight. Taylor rolled his eyes. Seriously. Atami, we're officers. This is the part where we pull out our wallets, bite the bullet for a more upscale meal and file the paperwork to get reimbursed. Atami grimaced. You know you can't use your allowance here, he replied in reference to the coin purse Taylor still carried. Atami, the service pays me a good $4,500 a month basic pay. I live on base, I have virtually no bills and no social life. Saving money is not my biggest problem. You don't have a wife either, answered Atami. Taylor smirked and held up his cell phone. Well, I got a text while we were getting Tuka dressed to kill. Mother is expecting us for dinner. You keep referring to her as your mother. Is that even legal? Atami asked. I assume you're not referring to your birth mother. No, Mom doesn't do dinner parties. As for the legality, I have no idea what imperial law is on the subject, but I am not going to be the fool that challenges that woman's will. If you want to be the guy that questions whether she is allowed to do something she has already decided is a thing, then by all means, and it's been nice knowing you. I'll pass on that. Very wise of you, Taylor agreed. Thank you. Atami paused as he fished out his own cell phone and pulled up a text. I don't think Mother will have a problem, Taylor told him. She says that not even pitched battle is an excuse for poor manners and inhospitality. Of course, if someone is determined to be of ill manners, then I expect she'd be pretty ruthless about them. Duly noted. It wasn't long they've reached the Diet building, but then, Centurion noted Sam Fisher standing nearby. He waved his hand, and the driver stopped. The doors opened, and Sam got inside. Hey, Sam, said Centurion, shaking his hand, what's up? I'm afraid, I've got some bad news, sir, answered Sam, there's been a security leak. Somebody leaked info to a certain member of the government opposition. So that means, the opposition is fully aware about the upcoming guests, asked Scott. I'm afraid, that's the case, said Sam. What's worse is that somebody's been blabbing several secrets to some foreign agents. Shadaloo, asked Centurion. Don't know, answered Sam, but because of the high security, the Japanese government has decided to take the emergency procedure. The meeting has been relocated to USS Vinson aircraft carrier, sir. You need to get into Yokosuka Naval Base, the chopper will be waiting for you there to take your party to Winson. And what about this leak in that stoolie? Asked Centurion. Leave him to me, sir, said Sam, I'll find him. The PSIA people are also on the job, so don't worry, everything's under control. Thanks, Sam, answered Centurion. By the way, sir, said Sam, I've got one good news though. The US Navy and the JNSDF has decided to have a replacement for Major Higaki. Her name is Lieutenant Colonel Mihara. She's both US Marine and JNSDF officer. She'll be waiting for you at Yokosuka. I like that, smiled Centurion. Thanks, Sam. You get back to PSIA guys and take care of that leak. Meanwhile, we've got our own battle to fight. Got it, sir, said Sam and leaves the bus. Are we not gonna go to the Senate? Asked Pina. There's been a change of plans, answered Centurion, because of a certain security problem the meeting has been relocated. We're going to Japanese Naval Base Yokosuka, from where we shall fly to the American ship Carl Winson. The Diet members, leaders of the Big Three, the UN Commission and Japanese Prime Minister will be waiting for us there. What do you mean, fly, Sir Prime? Asked Hamilton. You'll see, answered Centurion, let's roll. It was not long before they arrived at Yokosuka. Passing the guard station, Pina and her knights took notice that there were many people in uniforms like those worn by Taylor and Chief Richardson but virtually none wearing uniforms like Itami, Tomita, or Kuribayashi. Pina mulled on this. For some reason it was unsettling. The Empire would never have allowed another nation a base on its territory, but they would use such a base in someone else's country. That suggested something very disturbing. Pina had accepted that Itami's country was vastly more powerful than the Empire. She had assumed that this ANF was an alliance of equals, or that Taylor's country was a client state of Japan in much the same way her father had summoned the armies of the Empire's vassal states. But now it began to dawn on her that Taylor's country was the dominant partner, backing up an ally the Empire had been foolish enough to attack. The power of Japan was enough to give Pina nightmares. That another nation might be more powerful still, was terrifying. Here we are folks, Centurion announced. Camp Augustus. No littering, no loitering, and please don't feed the pigeons. The vehicle came to a stop before an impassive woman who looked to be in her late 30s and wore the olive-green uniform of a Marine lieutenant colonel. Though not even 5 feet tall, this woman still radiated command authority and presence. Taylor briefly thought she was like a more seasoned and mature version of Kuribayashi. On exiting the vehicle, Taylor saluted her and introduced Pina and her party and Sergeants Tomita and Kuribayashi. General Prime, I am Lieutenant Colonel Mihara, United States Marine Corps, spoke the woman, reporting for duty. Welcome to the Allied Nations Force, Lieutenant Colonel, said Centurion. I hope you'll be much better than your predecessor, who I've got demoted to sub-private for hysterical behavior. I'll do my best to prove your expectations, sir. Good. Now, I do believe we need to get to the USS Winson. Is the helicopter ready? Yes, sir. If you will kindly follow me, the helicopter is over there. All right, let's go, Lieutenant Colonel, said Centurion, then turned to others. Come on, people, let's move. We don't have much time. As the group followed Lieutenant Colonel Mihara, they've been greeted by the sight that they wouldn't believe. I'll be damned, gasped Eric. The Marine One, surprised Williams. I've never expected riding the president's personal helicopter. What's a Marine One? Asked Lele. It's a personal helicopter of the President of United States, answered Scott. It usually served as his personal transport, same as his Jet Air Force One. Sounds like James is making sure that the guests will arrive to the meeting in style, said Centurion. James, surprised Rory. Yup, said Centurion. James Marshall, the President of the United States of America, one of my best friends and my superior commanders, among with President Pudilov and Chairman Xi, not to mention Momotaro Tsurugi, the Prime Minister of Japan. Well, I'll be, said Tomita. You sure have a lot of friends in high places, Commander. When you're playing in the big league, answered Centurion, you've got to play with the big boys. Well, Come on, let's get going. Are we gonna fly on that? Said Pina, looking fearful. Yes, but don't worry, said Atami, it'll be easy and safe. But can't we just go there by the boat? Said Hamilton, who was also scared of flying. Too much time, answered Scott, don't worry, we'll be just fine. Tuka and Rory quickly got inside the Marine One, following by Mayui and her maids. Lele also got into it, quite interested of how this steel bird is gonna fly. While Pina and her knights, still looking nervous, got inside the helicopter, but also got surprised that the inside of the Marine One was quite luxury. Finally, Centurion and the other soldiers with Riza got inside the helicopter, as it began to spin his blades. A few minutes later, the Marine One took off and flied to the sea. This is the end of part 10 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel to see more amazing contents.